Tonight we will explore the delicate dance between mastery and surrender, between the shadows we control and the ones that teach us. There is nothing you need to do, nothing to fix, no one you need to become. Simply allow your body to settle, your breath to soften, and your mind to drift gently with the words. If this path calls to you, I invite you to subscribe, to join us on this journey of quiet discovery. Our central theme tonight is the wisdom found in letting go. Let us begin this journey together. Take a gentle breath now, noticing how the air fills your lungs, then softly releases. Feel the support beneath you. In a village nestled by a quiet river, where the evenings were filled with the chirping of crickets and the scent of night-blooming jasmine, lived a man named Gautam. Gautam was a shadow puppet master. With his skilled hands and a flickering oil lamp, he brought ancient tales to life. Behind his screen, he was a creator of worlds, making heroes battle mythical beasts and lovers meet beneath a paper moon. He loved his craft, the way light and shadow could conjure such vivid realities. Yet Gautam felt he himself lived in shadows, never quite stepping into the direct, clear light of day. He longed for substance, for a tangible presence. The village was a quiet place, its sounds muted by the soft earth and the rustle of bamboo. The river, slow and patient, carried the reflections of the sky, sometimes silver with moonlight, sometimes golden with the setting sun. Gautam's workshop, a humble space built of dark wood and woven mats, smelled of dried paper, old wood, and the faint, comforting aroma of sesame oil from his lamps. His long, artistic fingers, slender and agile, were always busy, shaping the delicate figures from thin sheets of hide, piercing them with intricate patterns, or articulating their joints with tiny threads. In his late 30s, his dark hair was often tied back to keep it from his thoughtful eyes, which usually focused on the interplay of light and shadow, and which held a subtle melancholy, a quiet yearning. He wore simple, practical clothing, dark fabrics that blended into the dimness of his performance space, designed to be unseen, to allow his creations to take center stage. For years, Gautam had been a master of his art. He understood the nuances of light, how a slight shift could make a warrior appear formidable or a maiden ethereal. He knew how to make a paper dragon breathe fire with mere movement, how to make a silk fan flutter with unspoken emotion. His audiences, young and old, would gasp and cheer, lost in the worlds he conjured. But as the applause faded and the lamps were extinguished, Gautam often felt a hollow ache. His creations were so vivid, so real in their fleeting moments, yet they were, by their very nature, insubstantial. They were shadows, reflections, never quite solid. And he, the creator, remained hidden behind the screen, a puppeteer in the dark. He longed to be seen, not just his art, but him, Gautam, in the clear, unyielding light. He sought a tangible presence, a worth that felt as solid and unwavering as the earth beneath his feet, not as ephemeral as the shadows he cast. He believed that true mastery, true worth, lay in directness, in stepping out from behind the veil. He wanted to control every aspect, to present something undeniable, something that couldn't vanish with the extinguishing of a lamp. He wanted to make his puppets solid, real, to perform them not as shadows, but as figures in the round, bathed in the full, bright light, without the softening, blurring effect of the screen. He imagined the audience seeing the intricate carving, the vibrant colors, the true artistry of his hands, not just the fleeting monochrome dance of light and dark. He believed this would bring him fulfillment, a sense of having truly arrived, truly created something substantial. The thought had been a quiet murmur at first, then a growing insistence. Tonight, he would try it. He had spent weeks crafting a new set of puppets, not from hide, but from carved wood, painted in rich hues, their joints articulated with tiny metal pins. They were beautiful, exquisite pieces, designed to be held up, to be seen directly. He had built a new, smaller stage for them, without a screen, just a simple platform bathed in the steady glow of several carefully positioned oil lamps, meant to illuminate, not to obscure. He would stand beside his creations, not behind them, letting his audience see both him and the tangible artistry he so carefully crafted. As the sun began its gentle descent, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples, Gautam meticulously arranged his wooden figures. He checked the wicks of his lamps, ensuring a steady, unwavering flame, the usual excitement mixed with a nervous flutter in his chest. This was a departure, a risk, but one he felt compelled to take. He wanted to feel the direct gaze of the audience, to offer them something undeniable, something he could truly grasp as his own. He yearned for that control, that clear, unmediated presentation. The villagers began to gather as dusk deepened, their hushed chatter a soft backdrop to the chirping crickets. They settled on woven mats before Gautam's small new stage, their faces expectant. Gautam took a deep breath, the scent of wood smoke and night-blooming jasmine filling the air. He stepped forward, his dark clothes now visibly distinct in the lamplight, and held up his first wooden puppet, a valiant hero, finely carved and painted. The audience murmured in appreciation, their eyes fixed on the vibrant figure, so different from the familiar shadows. Gautam began his story, his voice clear and resonant. He moved the wooden figures with practiced grace, making them dance and leap in the direct light. He felt a surge of pride, a sense of accomplishment. This was real, he thought. This was substance. He was here, visible, presenting his art in its truest, most controlled form. He moved through the tale, each movement precise, each puppet held firmly in his grip, determined to keep everything in its place, to leave nothing to chance, to reveal only what he intended. But as he reached a pivotal moment in the story, where the hero faced a formidable challenge, something unexpected happened. One of the oil lamps, perhaps because of a sudden, subtle shift in the evening breeze that drifted through a gap in the workshop walls, flickered. It was not a grand gust, but a whisper of air, enough to make the flame waver just for a moment. And in that fleeting instant, as the direct, steady light momentarily faltered, the shadows of Gautam and his wooden hero, exaggerated and distorted, leaped onto the wall behind the stage. They danced, wildly, unpredictably. The hero's shadow stretched, monstrous and vast, battling a distorted, shadowy Gautam. The wooden puppet, held firmly in Gautam's hand, was still, controlled, but its shadow was unleashed, a colossal figure engaged in an epic struggle that far surpassed the small, controlled movements of the puppet itself. The audience gasped, not in alarm, but in a sudden, collective awe. Their eyes, which had been fixed on the brightly lit wooden figures, now shifted, captivated by the unexpected, dynamic ballet of the shadows on the wall. They leaned forward, mesmerized by the unpredictable beauty, the sheer, untamed power of the dancing forms that had escaped Gautam's meticulous control. Gautam himself paused, his heart thumping. His eyes, so accustomed to the subtle interplay of light and dark, saw it too. The wooden puppet in his hand felt stiff, limited, almost dull, compared to the vibrant, spontaneous life that had erupted on the wall. He had sought control, a clear, direct presentation. But this accidental loss of mastery, this unforeseen flicker of the lamp, had created something far richer, far more vibrant than his rigid adherence to a plan. The shadows, freed from his conscious manipulation, had taken on a life of their own, telling a story that was both familiar and utterly new, a story that enthralled his audience in a way his carefully controlled performance had not. He watched, surprised, as his own shadow, distorted by the flickering light, became part of the drama, a giant, looming presence that seemed to grapple with the hero's immense form. It was chaotic, beautiful, and utterly beyond his intention. For a moment, he felt a flicker of panic, the urge to reassert control, to steady the lamp, to bring the performance back to his design. But then he saw the faces of the audience, their eyes wide with wonder, their lips parted in silent fascination. They were not confused or disappointed. They were captivated. They were experiencing a different kind of story, one born of accident and surrender. A quiet recognition settled in Gautam. He had wanted substance, directness, unyielding light. But here, in the unexpected dance of the shadows, in the very thing he had sought to avoid, was a profound beauty, a vividness that felt more alive than anything he had meticulously planned. He had tried to step out of the shadows, to control every aspect, but it was in the relinquishing of that control, in the embracing of the unpredictable, that a truly richer, more vibrant story unfolded. The lamp flickered again, subtly, and then settled into its steady glow, the wild shadows receding, leaving only the controlled, wooden figures. But the moment had passed. A seed had been planted. Gautam had learned his first profound lesson. Sometimes, true mastery is found not in holding fast, but in letting go, in allowing the world to reveal its own unpredictable magic. He finished the story, his hands still moving the wooden puppets, but his heart held a new, quiet understanding, a gentle acceptance of the unseen dance that had taken place. Where Gautam had found a profound beauty in the unexpected dance of shadows, in the very act of letting go of what he sought to control, another soul, in a different corner of the timeless world, wrestled with a different kind of vanishing. This was Asha, the dew collector, a woman whose days began before the first whisper of dawn, her life intricately woven with the fleeting, shimmering droplets that adorned the world each morning. Asha was a woman in her early 40s, with a quiet strength that belied her slight frame. Her hands, nimble and accustomed to delicate work, bore the faint scent of the herbs she often used the dew to prepare. Her dark hair was usually braided, neatly tucked away, and her gentle, observant eyes were always scanning the leaves, the petals, the blades of grass, for the faint, elusive shimmer of dew. She moved with a soft, careful tread, often seen wrapped in a simple, warm shawl against the pre-dawn chill, a silhouette against the lightening sky. Her work was meticulous, a quiet ritual performed in the tender moments between night and day. With tiny, absorbent cloths, or sometimes with the delicate curve of a polished shell, she would gather the precious moisture. This dew, pure and untouched by the harsh sun, was essential for the potent medicines she crafted, remedies for tired eyes, balms for irritated skin, tinctures that soothed restless minds. Her village relied on her, a quiet testament to her skill and dedication. Yet, despite the vital importance of her craft, a profound sense of loss accompanied Asha's every sunrise. Each morning, as the sky began to bleed its soft golden hues and the world stirred awake, Asha would watch as her meticulously gathered dew, even that which remained in her small, uncovered bowls, began its inevitable ascent. It would warm, it would thin, it would vanish, leaving behind only the faintest trace of moisture, a memory of its presence. It was a daily reminder, she felt, of the fleeting nature of her efforts, a testament to how quickly substance could disappear, how easily her dedicated work could seem to amount to nothing. Her core misunderstanding was a quiet, persistent ache. She believed that true value lay in permanence, in something she could hold, capture, and keep. The very act of the dew's evaporation, its transformation back into the unseen air, felt like a personal failure, a dissolution of her hard-won efforts. She watched it go, day after day, and with each vanishing droplet, a part of her heart felt a similar dissipation. She tried to find ways to make the dew last, to hold it indefinitely, to prevent its evaporation. She experimented with different vessels, hoping to outwit the sun. She used clay jars, thick and cool, believing their earthy embrace would preserve the moisture. She tried stoppered gourds, sealing them tightly, convinced that if she could simply contain the dew, it would remain, a tangible proof of her diligent work. She even tried placing her collection in the deepest, coolest parts of her small dwelling, far from any stray beam of sunlight, hoping to defy the inevitable warming of the day. She would leave a small, untouched sample in a shallow dish, observing it with a quiet intensity. As the sun climbed, the edges of the water would recede, the surface would ripple with an unseen energy, and slowly, imperceptibly, the shimmering pool would diminish until only a faint dampness stained the bottom of the dish. It was a daily lesson in impermanence, a lesson Asha felt she was failing to learn, because each time it simply reinforced her sense of loss, her belief that her efforts were vanishing, becoming nothing. One quiet morning, as she moved among the sleeping plants, her shawl pulled tight against the lingering chill, her fingers gently brushing the cool, wet leaves, she paused by a broad, velvety leaf of a medicinal plant. It was a plant known for its restorative properties, and Asha often sought its dew, believing it carried a unique essence. As she carefully leaned in, her eyes, accustomed to the dim light, focused on the glistening surface. The dew, usually appearing as perfect, spherical beads, seemed to be moving, not evaporating, not sliding, but actively being drawn in. She watched, captivated, as the tiny pores on the surface of the leaf, almost invisible to the naked eye, seemed to open, slowly, deliberately, and then, with a subtle, almost imperceptible pulsation, the leaf began to absorb the life-giving moisture. It was a quiet, intimate act, a gentle drinking, as if the plant itself was taking a deep, satisfying breath. Asha had always seen the dew as something on the plant, something separate that she collected. But now, she saw the plant absorbing it, integrating it. The dew was not simply sitting there, waiting to vanish. It was actively being taken in, becoming part of the plant's very being. The vanishing, she realized with a soft gasp, was not a loss at all. It was a delivery. She watched for a long time, the pre-dawn light slowly brightening, revealing more and more of this silent, sacred transaction. She saw the same subtle process on other leaves, on the delicate petals of a moonflower, on the slender blades of grass. The dew was not lost to the air. It was delivered to the earth, to the roots, to the leaves, to the very heart of the growing things. It nourished them, infused them with life, and then, in its own time, would rise again, to fall again, in an endless benevolent cycle. A quiet understanding settled over Asha, soft as the dew itself. Her role was not to prevent the vanishing, not to capture and hold, but to facilitate the delivery. The vanishing was not failure, but the very mechanism by which the medicine reached its true destination, nourishing the earth, nourishing the plants, and ultimately, through her collected remedies, nourishing the people. Her efforts were not evaporating into nothingness. They were transforming, becoming an essential, vital part of the cycle of life. The ache in her chest, the familiar sense of loss, began to recede, replaced by a gentle warmth, a quiet knowing. Her hands, which had often felt empty as the dew disappeared, now felt like conduits, channels of life, guiding the precious moisture to where it was most needed. She was not a keeper of permanence, but a participant in a grand, flowing delivery. She looked at her collection bowls, now with new eyes. The dew that still shimmered within them was not a fragile, temporary substance, but a potent, active life force, patiently waiting for its next stage, its next act of delivery. When it evaporated, it was not lost. It was simply moving on, continuing its journey, fulfilling its purpose in a way she could not always see, but could now deeply understand. Asha stood, the first rays of the sun touching her face, warming her skin. The chill in the air was easing, the birds beginning their morning chorus. The world was awakening, and so was she. She had always believed that value lay in what could be held, in what was tangible and lasting. But in the quiet, unassuming act of the plant drinking the dew, she had discovered that true delivery, true purpose, was found not in possession, but in allowing, in the graceful unfolding of transformation, in the understanding that everything, in its own time, reaches its true destination. Her heart felt lighter, infused with a quiet peace, a gentle acceptance of the world's ceaseless flow. The world, in its ceaseless flow, continued its gentle unfolding, revealing new lessons with each turn of the sun. From Asha's quiet understanding that vanishing was but a form of delivery, our journey now leads us to a man whose very purpose was to breathe life into fire, yet who felt his own life force slowly diminishing. In a village where the air often carried the faint scent of wood smoke and the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil, lived Vivek. Vivek was a furnace bellows operator, a man in his mid-30s with strong, muscled arms and a face often smudged with ash. His days were spent beside the roaring maw of the village forge, a place of intense heat and brilliant light where metal was tamed and shaped. His craft was simple, yet utterly vital, to work the great leather bellows, drawing in air and forcing it out, over and over, into the heart of the charcoal fire. It was his breath, amplified and directed, that made the coals glow with an incandescent fury that brought the iron to a pliable cherry red, ready for the blacksmith's artistry. The rhythmic creak and sigh of the bellows was the soundtrack to Vivek's life. With each pull of the heavy wooden handle, he would draw a deep, deliberate breath, his chest expanding, his lungs filling with the cooler air of the workshop. Then, with a slow, powerful push, he would release that breath, sending a concentrated gust through the nozzle, straight into the hungry flames. The fire would respond instantly. A sudden rush of sound, a surge of heat, a shower of golden sparks dancing upwards into the gloom of the forge. It was a powerful, primal dance, a constant exchange between his body and the roaring heart of the fire. Vivek was good at his work, meticulous and strong, his rhythm unwavering, his focus absolute. He understood the fire's needs, how a steady, even breath was crucial for the metal to heat uniformly, how a sudden burst could scorch, how a flagging effort could let the heat die. He gave himself to the forge, day in and day out, his body moving in unison with the great leather lungs, his breath flowing outwards, always outwards, into the demanding blaze. Yet, despite his skill, despite the undeniable power he wielded, a quiet disquiet settled in Vivek's heart. He felt his own breath was taken, constantly given to the insatiable fire, leaving him breathless, depleted, and oddly empty at the end of each day. It was as if his very essence, his life force, was being siphoned away, never quite replenished. He was the giver of breath, but never, it seemed, the receiver. The fire took, and he gave, and the equation felt perpetually unbalanced. His core misunderstanding was a deeply personal one. He believed that his breath, his energy, was a finite resource, something he expended for the benefit of another, without a natural return. He saw the fire grow, the metal transform, the blacksmith's tools glow red, all fueled by his persistent effort, by the very air from his lungs. But what was left for him? Only the lingering heat on his skin, the acrid smell of smoke, and the deep, bone-weary exhaustion that sank into his muscles and seemed to settle in the very core of his being. He yearned for an internal balance, for a sense of replenishment that never seemed to arrive. He felt like a vessel constantly pouring itself out, never quite refilling. He tried, in his quiet way, to find a solution. During the brief lulls in the blacksmith's work, when the fire needed only a gentle, steady coaxing, Vivek would experiment with different breathing techniques. He would try to breathe in more deeply, holding the air for a longer count, hoping to capture and store some of its vitality within himself before expelling it. He would try to breathe out more slowly, controlling the release, imagining that a more measured exhalation would somehow conserve his energy, rather than simply giving it away. He varied the rhythm of his pulls and pushes, seeking a magical cadence that would allow him to give to the fire without taking so much from himself. He tried to match his inhalations with the receiving aspect of the bellows when the leather expanded, drawing in the cool air. He tried to synchronize his exhalations with the giving aspect when the air rushed forth. He hoped that by consciously engaging with both parts of the cycle, he could trick his body, or his spirit, into feeling less drained. He would focus intensely on the cool air entering his nose, imagining it bringing clarity and strength, a counterpoint to the hot, smoky air he expelled. He would concentrate on the feeling of his lungs expanding, trying to draw nourishment not just from the air itself, but from the very act of drawing it in, of receiving. But no matter what he tried, the exhaustion remained. The sense of depletion, the subtle ache of constantly giving, persisted. The fire always demanded more, and he, the faithful operator, always delivered. The various techniques, the conscious efforts to find balance, felt like trying to catch water in a sieve. The fundamental act remained one of outward flow, of expenditure, and the internal well of his energy seemed to remain stubbornly at a low ebb. He would sigh, the sound lost in the forge's roar, and return to his steady, unyielding rhythm, surrendering once again to the demands of the flames, feeling his own breath, his own vitality, continue its one-way journey into the consuming heat. One sweltering afternoon, as the sun beat down relentlessly and the forge radiated an almost unbearable heat, Vivek was particularly weary. The blacksmith was working on a large, intricate piece, requiring a sustained, intense heat, and Vivek had been at the bellows for hours without respite. His arms ached, sweat streamed down his face, and his breath felt shallow, ragged. With a powerful push intended to send a final, strong blast into the glowing coals, he felt a sudden, sickening rip. The sound was sharp, distinct, even over the roar of the fire. The heavy leather of the bellows, stretched taut from countless expansions and contractions, had finally given way. A crucial seam near the top of the main chamber had torn, creating a small, jagged opening, a persistent leak. Instead of the concentrated blast he intended, the air now hissed out of the tear, escaping into the workshop before it could reach the fire with its full force. Vivek stopped, his heart sinking. He stared at the ragged tear, his chest tight with frustration. A broken bellows meant a weaker fire, more effort for less effect, and a slower, more arduous forging process. It felt like a personal failure, an added burden to his already depleted state. He imagined the blacksmith's impatient frown, the extended hours, the increased strain on his own body to compensate for the damaged tool. The brokenness of the bellows mirrored the brokenness he felt within himself, a constant leaking of his own energy. He quickly assessed the damage. It was not a catastrophic tear, but significant enough to impact the airflow. Repairing it properly would take time. Time they did not have with the critical piece on the anvil. With a grim set to his jaw, Vivek knew he had no choice but to continue. He adjusted his grip, pulling harder, pushing with greater force, trying to compensate for the escaping air, trying to maintain the fire's heat despite the flaw. Each movement felt heavier, more demanding. The rhythmic creak of the bellows was now accompanied by the insistent, escaping hiss of air from the tear, a constant reminder of the imperfection, the inefficiency, the extra effort he was now forced to expend. He felt even more depleted, his breath now not just feeding the fire, but also escaping uselessly into the hot, heavy air of the workshop. He worked on, pushing through the frustration and exhaustion. The sparks continued to fly, the hammer continued to ring, and the forge, though perhaps a little less fierce, still glowed. But as the minutes stretched into an hour, and then another, something peculiar began to happen. As he pulled the bellows towards him, drawing in air, the tear would open slightly, sucking in a small amount of the surrounding air. Then, as he pushed, forcing the air out, a portion of that air, instead of roaring into the fire, would escape through the tear. But this escaping air, instead of simply dissipating, created a small, continuous current. It was not a forceful blast, but a gentle, steady stream of air directed outwards and slightly upwards from the torn seam. And because the air it drew in was the cooler, ambient air of the workshop, rather than the superheated air from the fire itself, the escaping stream was noticeably cooler. It was almost imperceptible at first, just a faint stirring of the hot, still air around his face. But as he continued his rhythmic work, the subtle current became undeniable. Each push of the bellows, even as it fed the fire, sent a delicate, cooling breeze across his brow, down his neck, and over his sweat-dampened arms. It was a small, unexpected reprieve, a breath of cool air in the oppressive heat of the forge. Vivek paused, his hands still on the bellows handle, a look of profound surprise on his ash-smudged face. He continued his movement, pulling and pushing, and there it was again, the subtle, refreshing current of air. The tear, that annoying, frustrating flaw, was not only allowing air to escape, but in doing so, it was creating a small, personal cooling breeze, a tiny eddy of relief in the furnace's inferno. The fire was still fed, still roared, still melted the metal. But now, he was also receiving. He looked at the tear in the bellows, no longer with frustration, but with a quiet, dawning wonder. What he had perceived as a flaw, a brokenness, a sign of inefficiency, was serving a dual purpose. It was indeed letting air escape, but in that very act of escape, it was offering an unexpected benefit, a gift of cool air that refreshed him, invigorating him even as he continued to give his breath to the fire. The brokenness was not simply a hindrance, it was a hidden advantage, a source of unexpected comfort. A profound shift began within Vivek. His own breath, he realized, was not simply a one-way street of expenditure. The act of breathing, of giving, had always been accompanied by a corresponding act of receiving, of drawing in. But he had been so focused on what he lost to the fire, what he gave away, that he had failed to notice the subtle ways he received back, even through what appeared to be a defect. The bellows, in its broken state, was teaching him that imperfections could be gifts, that broken things often held hidden advantages, offering unexpected pathways for replenishment and renewal. He continued his work, the rhythmic creak and hiss of the bellows now holding a new meaning. The cool breeze on his face was a tangible reminder that even in giving, there was receiving, and that sometimes the most unexpected benefits arise from the very things we perceive as flaws. The feeling of depletion began to recede, replaced by a sense of gentle reciprocity, a quiet understanding that the breath he gave out was not lost, but was part of a larger, more intricate exchange. He was not just pouring out, he was also, in ways he hadn't seen before, being replenished, being cooled, being sustained. The fire still roared, the metal still glowed, but now Vivek too felt a quiet spark rekindle within his own heart, a gentle acceptance of the unexpected gifts found in the imperfections of life. The gentle lesson from Vivek of finding unexpected gifts in what we perceive as broken settles softly upon us, like dust after a storm. It reminds us that even when our efforts feel flawed or our energy seems to leak, there can be an unseen replenishment, a quiet advantage woven into the very fabric of imperfection. Now, our path leads us higher, to the vast open skies, and to a man whose gaze is ever fixed on the circling patterns above him. In a land where the sky stretched endlessly, a canvas of shifting blues and grays, lived Param. He was a man in his early 40s, with a lean build and eyes that held the focused intensity of one constantly scanning the distant horizon. His face, weathered by sun and wind, often bore a subtle furrow of concern, a quiet tension that rarely left him. Param's task was a solitary one, a duty passed down through generations. He was a vulture watcher. From his vantage point, on a high, windswept ridge overlooking vast plains and scattered forests, he spent his days observing the silent, patient circling of the great raptors. For many, the sight of vultures spiraling in the sky might simply be a natural phenomenon, a distant, unheeded dance. But for Param, their movements held a singular, often chilling significance. He was trained to interpret their patterns, to understand the subtle shifts in their ascent and descent, the slow, deliberate widening of their circles, or the sudden, urgent tightening. Each alteration in their flight, each minute adjustment of their wings against the unseen currents, could signal a discovery, a falling, an end. He was meant to discern where death had laid its claim, to guide those who would then come to collect what remained, ensuring the land was cleansed. It was a vital, if somber, role. Yet, as he watched the birds, day after day, a profound and personal dread began to take root within him. He saw his own life similarly circled. The invisible, inevitable doom he observed in the patterns of the vultures seemed to mirror a pervasive fear that hovered over his own existence. He felt as if his days, too, were being patiently watched, his own life force a slow, unseen dwindling, drawing the attention of an ultimate, inescapable end. The circling birds became a constant, silent reminder of mortality, not just for the creatures below, but for himself. He imagined his own hidden vultures, unseen by others, patiently waiting, observing his every move, anticipating his final stillness. This pervasive sense of being circled, of an approaching unseen end, cast a long shadow over Param's spirit. He lived with a quiet anxiety, a constant tension in his shoulders, a slight tremor in his hands. He tried to understand the bird's flight with an almost desperate intensity, seeking patterns that might offer an escape from this perceived fate. He studied the nuances of their thermals, the way they caught the rising currents, searching for any anomaly, any flight path that did not lead to a final descent. He would subtly shift his own vantage point on the ridge, moving from one outcrop of rock to another, as if by changing his own perspective, he could somehow confuse his own invisible watchers, or perhaps even outrun them. He tried to distract himself, focusing on the distant clouds, the movement of a herd of antelope, anything to pull his gaze from the hypnotic, ominous circles. But always, his eyes would return to the sky, to the silent, watchful sentinels. He longed for a way to break the circle, to understand that not all circling led to an end, that not all observation was a prelude to doom. One morning, the air was still and warm, the sky a vast, unbroken blue. Param had been at his post since before dawn, watching the first light paint the distant peaks. As the sun climbed higher, casting long, lean shadows across the plains, he noticed a particularly large flock of vultures beginning to gather. Not just a few, but dozens, perhaps even scores, began to rise from the distant trees, slowly gaining altitude. Their wingtips caught the sunlight, glinting like polished obsidian as they began their ascent. They formed a grand, majestic spiral, a slow, deliberate vortex high above the land. The intensity of their circling was undeniable, more pronounced than usual, more focused. They held their position, not drifting with the wind, but tightening their gyre over a specific unseen point far below. Param felt his heart quicken, a familiar knot of dread tightening in his chest. This was it, he thought. This was a significant discovery, a clear signal. The sheer number of birds, the unwavering focus of their descent, indicated something substantial, something final. His own invisible vultures, he felt, were drawing closer, their unseen wings beating in rhythm with his own anxious pulse. He watched for a long time, meticulously charting their movements in his mind, noting the precise coordinates of their focus. The image of the tight, relentless circle burned into his vision. With a sigh that carried the weight of his long-held fears, he knew he had to investigate. He began his descent from the ridge, a trek that would take him several hours across the rugged terrain. Each step felt heavy, burdened by the certainty of what he expected to find. The sun beat down, the dust rose with his feet, and the distant, silent circling of the birds remained a constant, powerful presence above him. He imagined the scene he would encounter, the stillness, the quiet finality. He walked with a sense of grim duty, his mind painting vivid pictures of the inevitable. The land stretched out, silent save for the rustle of dry grasses and the occasional buzz of an insect. He passed by ancient, gnarled trees and dry riverbeds, his eyes occasionally scanning the sky, confirming the vultures still held their relentless vigil. As he drew closer to the area where the birds were concentrated, the air grew thick with anticipation. He braced himself, slowing his pace, preparing for the sight. Finally, he reached the cluster of low hills and sparse trees that marked the epicenter of the circling. He moved cautiously, his senses alert, expecting the telltale scent, the undisturbed stillness that precedes such a discovery. He crept around a thicket of thorny bushes, pushing aside a screen of hanging vines, and there, in a wide, sun-drenched hollow, was the source of the vulture's unwavering attention. But it was not what he expected. Before him, scattered across the grassy hollow, was a large herd of cattle, dozens of them, not fallen, not dying, not even sick. They were simply sleeping, deeply, peacefully, utterly at rest in the warm afternoon sun. Some lay stretched out on their sides, legs splayed, their massive bodies completely still. Others were curled in on themselves, their heads tucked beneath their flanks, their breathing slow and even. A few, perhaps, had shifted slightly, their eyelids fluttering, but the vast majority were in a profound slumber, a collective pause in their grazing, a moment of deep, unburdened repose. The air was calm, free of any scent of decay, filled only with the quiet hum of insects and the gentle warmth of the sun. Param stood frozen, his breath catching in his throat, a sudden, profound silence descending upon his own racing thoughts. The great, dark birds continued to circle high above, their shadows passing silently over the sleeping forms below. They were indeed observing. They were indeed curious. But there was no death here, no threat, no end, only rest, only a pause. He watched the cattle for a long time, a slow, dawning wonder spreading across his ash-smudged face. The sun warmed his skin. The quiet peace of the scene seeped into his bones. The vultures above, those silent, watchful sentinels, were not waiting for an end. They were simply checking. They were simply observing the world below them, perhaps curious about the unusual stillness, perhaps waiting for the herd to awaken and move on, or perhaps just riding the thermals, using this gathering of life as a marker in the vast, featureless landscape. Their circling did not signify doom, it signified curiosity, patience, a profound connection to the rhythms of life, even the rhythms of rest. A profound realization began to unfold within Param, like a flower opening slowly to the sun. His own invisible vultures, those circling anxieties that had haunted him for so long, were not patiently waiting for his life to die. They were not harbingers of an inevitable, fearful end. Perhaps they were merely checking. Perhaps they were merely observing his own life's quiet pauses, its moments of stillness, its deep rests. Perhaps they were even inviting him to look closer, to truly see what was happening in his own perceived circles of doom. The fear he had carried, the dread of the unknown circles, began to loosen its grip, like a knot untying itself slowly. He sat down on a warm rock, his gaze moving from the peaceful sleeping cattle to the majestic, circling birds above. The vastness of the sky no longer felt like a stage for his personal doom, but an open expanse of possibility. The circling was not an end, but a part of the larger dance, a continuous movement that encompassed both stillness and activity, life and the quiet moments within it. He realized that the unknown circles in his own life, the moments of uncertainty, the periods of quiet waiting, might not be threats at all. They might simply be invitations to observe more closely, to release his fear, to look beyond his initial assumptions, and to discover the unexpected peace that could be found even in the midst of what he had always perceived as ominous. The silence of the sleeping cattle, the patient circling of the birds, offered a deep, quiet truth. Sometimes, the greatest threats we perceive are merely the universe's gentle invitation to look again, to truly see, and to let go of the stories we tell ourselves about what is to come. The quiet understanding that settled over Param, watching the sleeping cattle and the circling birds, reminds us of the many ways we interpret the world around us, and how often our deepest fears cloud our clearest sight. Sometimes, What we believe to be an ending is merely a pause. Sometimes, what we perceive as a threat is simply an invitation to look more closely, to understand more deeply. This gentle truth, this quiet unraveling of misconception, guides us now to another soul, a woman whose life was dedicated to seeing, yet who struggled with the unseen. Our path now leads us to Kanti, a young woman in her late 20s, whose days were spent atop a lonely watchtower. Her purpose was clear, etched into the very stone of the ancient structure: to read the smoke signals from distant outposts, to interpret the whispers of the wind that carried messages across vast mountain ranges and deep valleys. Kanti was adept, her eyes sharp, her mind quick to translate the rising plumes, the specific rhythms of their ascent, the varied shades of gray against the sky. A thin, steady column meant an all clear. A series of short, sharp puffs might signal a warning. A dense, dark cloud lingering low could be a call for aid, a desperate plea. She understood the language of smoke intimately. A silent conversation carried on the currents of the air. Her watchtower stood sentinel on a high, wind-swept ridge, a solitary finger pointing towards the heavens. From its weathered stone platform, Kanti could see for miles on a clear day. The distant peaks blurring into the horizon, the winding ribbon of a river far below, the patchwork of fields tended by unseen hands. She spent long hours there, bundled in thick woven cloths against the chill, her gaze sweeping the vast expanse, patiently waiting for the subtle shifts in the air that would tell their story. Her hands, though small, were strong from tending the signal fire, from stacking wood and fanning embers. Her face, often smudged with ash, held a keen intelligence, but also a quiet, persistent yearning. For all her skill in interpreting the urgent messages of others, Kanti felt her own silent distress signals seemed unseen, unreceived. She, too, carried burdens, anxieties that swirled within her like unread smoke. She had her own worries, her own quiet cries for understanding, her own desires for connection that felt lost in the vastness of the world. She longed for a response, a visible acknowledgement, a clear sign that her own truth, her own internal messages, were being heard and understood by someone, somewhere. The problem was not that she lacked the ability to send signals, but that she yearned for visible validation, for a clear and undeniable reply that her own messages had landed, had been received, had made an impact. Sometimes, in the quiet solitude of her tower, Kanti would light a small fire for herself, not for official communication, but for her own unspoken messages. She would watch the smoke rise, shaping it with her breath, willing it to carry her quiet pleas, her hidden fears, her deep loneliness out into the world. She would try different woods, hoping for a clearer, brighter plume. She would experiment with varying smoke patterns, making them dense and lingering, or light and fleeting, hoping that a particular rhythm, a unique density, would make her internal message undeniable, impossible to ignore. She even tried new locations, moving her small personal fire to different corners of the watchtower platform, believing that perhaps the wind currents, the angle of the sunlight, or the very position itself might make her message more potent, more visible, more likely to elicit the response she so desperately craved. But always, the smoke would dissipate, scattering into the endless blue or merging with the distant haze. No answering plume would rise from the faraway mountains. No one would approach the tower, having somehow interpreted her personal signals. The vast, indifferent sky would simply absorb her efforts, leaving her with the lingering scent of wood smoke and a familiar ache of unreceived communication. She would sigh, a soft, wistful sound, and turn her attention back to the official signals, burying her own yearning beneath the demands of her duty. The silence felt like an absence, a void where a response should have been, confirming that her messages, her very being, were simply unheard. One morning, the world awoke shrouded in a thick, pervasive fog. It rolled in silently during the night, a dense gray blanket that swallowed the mountains, obscured the valleys, and reduced the vast expanse around Conti's watchtower to a mere handful of paces. The usual distant peaks, the winding river, the familiar fields, all vanished, dissolved into an impenetrable wall of swirling mist. The sun was a faint, hazy glow behind the gray, offering no warmth, no clear direction. Conti stood on her platform, her hands gripping the cold stone railing, feeling the damp chill of the fog seeping into her bones. She could not see the closest village, let alone the distant outposts from which signals usually emanated. The world was utterly silent, save for the drip of condensation from the eaves and the muffled whisper of the wind as it moved through the heavy air. All distant signals were completely obscured. Not a single plume, no matter how great the effort of the sender, could penetrate this dense veil. Yet, despite the complete absence of visible communication, Conti knew, deep in her heart, that messages were still being sent. She knew that in other watchtowers, across other obscured ridges, other signal readers were tending their fires, sending their plumes, relaying their warnings or their calls for aid. The fog did not mean the cessation of communication. It simply meant the obscuring of it. The act of sending, the intention to communicate, persisted, even if the reception was temporarily impossible. She closed her eyes, breathing in the damp, earthy scent of the mist. She imagined the hands of another signal reader, just like hers, stacking wood, fanning embers, watching the smoke rise. She imagined the message forming in their mind, the urgency, the hope, the simple act of putting truth into a visible form. And she understood, with a quiet, undeniable clarity, that the message itself held power, held truth, even if it met with no immediate, visible response. The intention, the effort, the sending, these were complete in themselves. They were not diminished by the fog, nor by the lack of an immediate answer. A quiet understanding settled over her, a deep stillness in the heart of the swirling mist. The act of sending, of communicating one's truth, mattered immensely, she realized, even without an immediate, visible response. Her own unspoken distress, the silent pleas she had sent into the vastness of the sky, might well be received in ways she could not yet perceive. Just because she could not see the answering smoke did not mean her message had not arrived, had not been felt, had not resonated in some unseen heart, in some distant place. The validation she had yearned for, the visible proof of reception, was perhaps not the true measure of her communication's worth. The act of expressing, of putting her truth into the world, was significant in itself. The fog had shown her that visibility was not a prerequisite for existence, nor for impact. Messages were still being sent, unseen. Truths were still being shared, unheard, and her own distress, her own quiet yearnings, were no less real, no less valid, simply because they did not elicit an immediate, discernible echo. She opened her eyes, looking out into the featureless gray. The world was small, intimate, yet it held within it the vast potential of unseen connections. The loneliness she had felt so acutely on the tower, the sense of her own messages vanishing, began to recede, replaced by a gentle sense of quiet affirmation. Her efforts were not evaporating into nothingness. They were simply traveling, finding their way through currents she could not see, reaching destinations she could not chart. Conti sat down on the cold stone, leaning against the rough wall of her tower. The fog enveloped her, a soft, comforting presence rather than an isolating barrier. She understood that her own distress, her unspoken truths, were like the smoke signals she sent for herself. They were released into the world, an offering, a communication, regardless of whether a visible response was immediately returned. The very act of sending, of expressing, was a complete and meaningful gesture in itself. It was a testament to her own presence, her own voice, her own connection to the larger, unseen web of existence. The silence of the fog-bound morning no longer felt like an absence of response, but a vast, receptive space. A space where messages traveled on unseen currents, where truths resonated beyond the limits of sight, and where the act of offering one's innermost self was a profound and complete communication, whether visibly answered or not. She breathed deeply, the cool, damp air filling her lungs, a quiet certainty settling in her heart. Her messages were being sent. Her truth was being communicated. And that, in itself, was enough. She had moved from a yearning for visible validation to a quiet trust in the inherent power of expression. The fog, which had seemed to block all communication, had in fact illuminated a deeper, more profound form of connection. From the quiet certainty that settled in Conti's heart amidst the swirling fog, our path now leads us to Rupa, a woman whose life was intimately woven with the delicate, often misunderstood creatures of the earth. Rupa was a leech collector, a woman in her mid-30s, her hands both skilled and gentle. She moved with a quiet precision, her fingers accustomed to the soft, cool touch of the medicinal leeches she gathered from the still, shaded pools deep within the marshlands. She knew their subtle movements, understood their purpose, and could discern with an almost innate wisdom which ones would draw poison from a festering wound, and which, if left too long, might draw too much, leaving a patient weakened. Her work was one of careful balance, of precise application and timely removal. She understood the exchange of life forces, the giving and taking that governed the health of the body. Yet, in her own life, Rupa felt an invisible drain, a subtle yet persistent ebbing of her own vitality. It was not a sudden illness, nor a visible wound, but a slow, quiet depletion, as though her own life force was being invisibly siphoned away, leaving her feeling weary, hollowed out, and without the vibrant energy she saw in others. This unseen drain was her constant companion, a shadow that stretched across her days, even as she tended to her patients with meticulous care. She would watch the leeches plump and grow as they drew out the stagnant humors, and then gently, expertly, coax them to release their hold when their work was complete. But for herself, she felt no such release. The sensation of being drained clung to her, a faint, persistent ache that no amount of rest or nourishment seemed to alleviate. It was as if she, too, had an unseen leech attached, one that never grew full, never let go. She tried, in her own quiet ways, to protect herself. She brewed special teas from the herbs that grew near the marsh, believing they might fortify her inner essence. She wore amulets of polished stone, hoping they would create a barrier against whatever unseen forces were leeching her strength. She would sit in silent contemplation, attempting to visualize a shield around her, a protective aura that would deflect the subtle encroachments. Yet these efforts, though earnest, brought little lasting relief. The feeling of being slowly, invisibly consumed remained. Her life, she felt, was a constant giving, a quiet pouring out, with no visible replenishment, no clear end to the unseen draw. She built metaphorical barriers around her heart, around her spirit, hoping to contain what little energy she felt she had left, to prevent the flow from entirely vanishing. One quiet afternoon, Rupa sat in the dappled shade of her small, clay-walled dwelling. A patient, an old man suffering from a persistent swelling in his leg, had just left, his steps a little lighter, the pain in his eyes a little less sharp. Rupa was carefully cleaning her implements, preparing the leeches for their return to the cool, dark jars where they rested between their vital tasks. Her hands moved with their usual gentle rhythm, her mind, however, still turning over the familiar worry of her own invisible fatigue. She picked up a small, polished wooden bowl that held a single leech, still plump and dark with the blood it had drawn from the old man's leg. It had performed its duty well, diligently, patiently. Rupa observed it, not with revulsion, but with a deep, professional respect for its unique purpose. It clung to the smooth wood for a moment, its body distended, its task clearly fulfilled. She watched its tiny, subtle movements, the way its body pulsed with the rich nourishment it had absorbed. Then, without any coaxing from Rupa, without any need for her gentle prodding or the application of salt that sometimes hastened their release, the leech simply let go. It detached itself from the bowl, a small, soft, almost imperceptible movement, and dropped with a tiny, wet sound into the fresh water Rupa had prepared for it. It settled to the bottom of the bowl, perfectly still for a moment, then began to move, slowly, gracefully, no longer seeking to cling, no longer needing to draw. It was complete. Its work was done. It had taken what it needed, reached its capacity, and released its hold, freely, completely. Rupa watched this simple natural act, her hands pausing in their work. A quiet tremor ran through her, not of fear, but of a sudden, profound recognition. She had seen this countless times before, of course, leeches releasing their hold, but never before had she seen it with such an open, receptive mind. Never before had she allowed the observation to truly settle, to resonate within her own experience. The leech had taken what it needed, and then, satisfied, it had simply let go. It had not clung endlessly. It had not sought to draw every last drop of life. There was a natural limit to its taking, a point of completion, after which its purpose was fulfilled and its grip was released. And in that moment, a deep insight bloomed within Rupa. What if her own unseen drains, the subtle forces she felt were slowly consuming her, also had their limits? What if the things that seemed to ceaselessly take from her, the invisible burdens, the emotional tolls, the subtle anxieties that depleted her spirit, were not boundless, endless wells of consumption? What if they too would eventually reach their capacity, their point of saturation, and simply let go? The thought was like a cool stream flowing over parched earth. Her fear, which had been a constant, low thrum beneath the surface of her days, began to recede. She had always imagined these unseen drains as insatiable, as forces that would continue to draw from her until nothing was left. But the leech, plump and satisfied, had shown her a different truth. Even the most persistent drawing had an end. Even the most subtle taking had a point of fulfillment. She looked at the leech now, resting peacefully in the water, its work complete. It had delivered its purpose, and now it rested. And she, Rupa, had feared its continuous grip when its very nature was to take what was needed and then release. Her attempts to build barriers to protect herself had been born of a misunderstanding, a belief in endless depletion. But the natural world, in its elegant simplicity, had just shown her that even parasites, even those who take, operate within a cycle of limits and release. The fear that had tightened around her heart, the quiet dread of being invisibly consumed, began to loosen its grip. What drained her, she realized, whether seen or unseen, would also eventually reach its capacity. The emotional demands, the subtle anxieties, the energy-sapping worries. They were not infinite. They had a natural lifespan, a point of saturation. They too would eventually have enough and let go. Just like the leech. A deep, soft sigh escaped her lips, a sigh not of weariness, but of gentle relief. She had been fighting against an imagined enemy, an endless drain. But the world, in its wisdom, was always in motion, always in flux, always moving towards completion and release. Her role was not to perpetually protect herself from an endless draw, but to trust in the natural cycle, to allow things to unfold, to allow the eventual letting go. She picked up the bowl, her hands no longer tense with the effort of guarding her own invisible boundaries, but soft with a newfound acceptance. The fear of being endlessly consumed began to dissipate like mist in the morning sun. The invisible leech that she had imagined clinging to her own life force began to soften its grip, not because she had fought it off, but because she had understood its nature. It too would eventually have enough. It too would eventually release. Rupa felt a spaciousness open within her, a quiet permission to simply be, to experience the ebb and flow of her own energy without the constant dread of irreversible loss. The act of collecting, of tending, of applying, and of releasing was not just the rhythm of her profession, but the rhythm of life itself. And in that rhythm, there was inherent wisdom, inherent balance. She placed the leeches back into their jars, her movements imbued with a new sense of peace. Her life force, she now understood, was not eternally ebbing. It was part of a larger natural cycle of giving and receiving, of filling and releasing. And the fear that had held her captive, the fear of endless depletion, was simply a misunderstanding of this beautiful, inevitable rhythm. She had been invited to release her fear, to allow the natural cycle to unfold, trusting that all things, even those that draw, eventually reach their capacity and let go. A deep, quiet rest began to settle within her. Our journey now takes us to a quiet corner of the village, where the rhythmic scrape and whisper of fine abrasives against metal could often be heard through the open window of a small, sunlit workshop. Here, in a space rich with the scent of beeswax and polishing compounds, lived a man named Sanjay. Sanjay was a mirror polisher. His craft was one of precision and patience, of coaxing a perfect, flawless surface from raw bronze, a surface so clear it could reflect the truth of the world with unwavering accuracy. Day after day, Sanjay worked with an almost meditative focus. His hands, strong and calloused, moved with a practiced grace, guiding the polishing cloths across the bronze, slowly, meticulously. He would begin with coarser grits, patiently removing the initial roughness, the faint blemishes, the marks of casting. Then he would move to finer and finer powders, each application bringing the surface closer to that pristine, unblemished clarity. Nobles and scholars from distant lands sought out Sanjay's mirrors, for they were renowned for their unparalleled ability to reflect faces, landscapes, and even the subtle shifts of light with absolute fidelity. He created surfaces that offered a singular, undeniable truth. Yet, despite his profound mastery of reflection, Sanjay felt that his own inner truth was far from the polished perfection he created. He was a man in his early 40s, with thoughtful eyes that often held a subtle, unarticulated concern. His face, though kind, bore the faint lines of a mind that wrestled with complexities, with thoughts that tangled and emotions that swirled like fine dust motes in a shaft of sunlight. He felt his own essence was tarnished, full of perceived imperfections, a dense, intricate web of experiences and feelings that defied any attempt to smooth them into a clear, singular clarity. He longed for the same simplicity, the same directness of truth that his mirrors offered. He yearned to see himself reflected, not as a confusing mosaic, but as one whole, unmistakable being. He would often spend his evenings in quiet contemplation, much like he spent his days polishing. He tried to apply the principles of his craft to his own internal landscape. He would attempt to identify the rough spots in his character, the blemishes of his past, the tarnishes of his worries. He would mentally rub at them, trying to smooth them away, to bring forth a simpler, purer self beneath. He tried to simplify his thoughts, to quiet the internal dialogue that seemed to endlessly complicate his perceptions. He sought a spiritual compound, a mental cloth that could buff away the layers of his own perceived flaws, leaving behind only an unblemished, singular self. He experimented with different meditations, seeking a clarity that felt elusive, like smoke curling away from a distant fire. He believed that if he could just find the right technique, the perfect method, he could achieve the same flawless, singular truth within himself that he offered to the world in his mirrors. He sought a truth that was unyielding, unambiguous, a reflection of a self without any shadow or doubt. One crisp morning, a messenger arrived at Sanjay's workshop bearing a heavily wrapped package. It was a mirror, a family heirloom from a revered noble household, generations old, known for its intricate etched frame and the stories it had silently witnessed. But as Sanjay carefully unwrapped it, his breath caught. The bronze surface, once a magnificent expanse of polished clarity, was now deeply fractured. A jagged, star-shaped crack spider-webbed across its entire face, rendering it, in the conventional sense, beyond repair. The metal itself was compromised, the integrity of its surface irrevocably broken. Sanjay felt a pang of disappointment, a familiar ache of frustration. This was exactly the kind of damage he considered irreversible, the kind of brokenness that defied all his skills. A mirror, to him, was meant to be whole, to offer a complete reflection. This fractured surface was the antithesis of everything he strove for, a stark reminder of the imperfections he sought to eliminate. He considered setting it aside, deeming it a lost cause, perhaps suggesting it be melted down and recast. But there was something in its age, in the history etched into its frame, that compelled him to pause. He held it gently, his eyes tracing the paths of the cracks, feeling the cool, unforgiving lines beneath his fingertips. The morning light, which usually streamed in through his window to illuminate his perfect surfaces, now fell upon this broken mirror. Its surface, once perfect, now fractured into a mosaic of sharp lines, reflected the afternoon light in 100 splintered angles. He saw his own face, not whole, but broken into many parts, each part reflecting a different fragment of the room around him. He saw the dust motes dancing in the sun, the rough texture of his polishing cloth, the worn lines on his own fingers, all at once, from multiple perspectives. It was not one truth, but many truths simultaneously. He had always sought the single, clear reflection, the flawless surface that showed just one reality. But here, in the brokenness, was a richer, more complex seeing. Something shifted inside him, a quiet recognition. As he continued to hold the broken mirror, turning it slightly, the fragmented reflections danced and shimmered, each piece capturing a unique sliver of the world. A tiny segment might show the intricate weave of his tunic, while another, adjacent, showed the sun-dappled leaves outside his window. A third might hold the deep, thoughtful gaze of his own eye, and a fourth, the subtle curve of his mouth. It was a symphony of small, individual truths, each contributing to an understanding that was far more comprehensive, far more nuanced than any single, unbroken reflection could provide. The cracks, which he had always perceived as flaws, as destroyers of clarity, were in fact revealing new pathways of perception, new ways of seeing the interconnectedness of things. He looked at his own reflection again, the tarnish he had always sought to polish away. The imperfections he had seen as flaws now seemed like the very lines that gave him depth, that allowed him to reflect the world not as a singular, unblemished surface, but as a rich tapestry of experience. His truth was not tarnished, it was simply complex. His own perceived imperfections, the intricate web of his thoughts and feelings, were not something to be smoothed away, but rather the very elements that allowed him to see the world and himself in a multifaceted, deeply textured way. The anxieties he held, the doubts that shadowed him, the very intricacies of his character that he had tried so hard to buff out, were, in this new light, not flaws to be eliminated, but facets to be embraced. He sat very still, the fragmented light dancing in his eyes, a soft sigh leaving his lips. The clarity he had sought was not in the perfect surface, but in the acceptance of the broken, the multiple, the real. He had yearned for a singular, unyielding truth, when truth itself, he now understood, was often a beautiful collection of fragments, each revealing a part of the whole. His perceived tarnish, his inner complexity, was not a failing, but an inherent richness, allowing him to perceive and reflect a deeper, more comprehensive understanding of himself and the world around him. Brokenness, he learned, could reveal a deeper, more intricate, more profound truth than any flawless surface might ever show. A quiet sense of peace settled over Sanjay, a gentle warmth spreading through his chest. The burden of seeking an impossible, singular perfection began to lift. He no longer felt the urgent need to smooth away every perceived blemish within himself, to simplify every complex emotion. Instead, he felt a quiet permission to simply be the intricate, multifaceted person he was. His own life, with its varied experiences, its moments of joy and its passages of sorrow, its doubts and its certainties, was not a surface to be flawlessly polished, but a mirror, cracked perhaps, but one that could, in its very brokenness, reflect a richer, more profound tapestry of reality. He placed the mirror gently on his workbench, no longer seeing it as damaged goods, but as a profound teacher. The beauty of its shattered surface now spoke to him of a deeper wisdom, a wisdom that embraced all angles, all perspectives, all the intricate, shimmering pieces of truth. His hands, which had always striven for perfect uniformity, now felt a new appreciation for the unexpected patterns formed by fracture. His work and his life would continue, but with a new understanding that sometimes the most comprehensive clarity comes not from erasing the lines, but from accepting the beautiful, complex patterns that brokenness can reveal. He allowed himself to simply rest in this realization, the quiet hum of acceptance filling his workshop. The quiet hum of acceptance filling his workshop. Sanjay, the mirror polisher, had found a profound clarity not in flawless surfaces, but in the intricate beauty of brokenness, a truth composed of many shimmering fragments. His journey had led him to understand that perceived imperfections were not flaws to be erased, but facets to be embraced, revealing a richer, more comprehensive tapestry of reality. Now, as the soft light of that morning gave way to the deep velvet hush of the coming night, we turn our gaze to another soul, working diligently in the pre-dawn hours, long before the world fully awakens. This is Panu, the night soil carrier, a man whose quiet dedication to his task was as unwavering as the coming of the sun, yet whose heart carried a heavy, unseen burden. Panu was a man in his mid-30s, his frame strong and accustomed to labor, his movements precise and practiced even in the deepest darkness. He moved through the sleeping village like a whisper, his footsteps muffled by the soft earth, the only sound the gentle creak of the wooden yoke across his shoulders and the soft clink of his covered pails. His work was essential, though often unseen and unacknowledged. He carried away the waste from homes, ensuring the village remained clean, preventing illness, maintaining a delicate balance of hygiene that most took for granted. He was the silent architect of cleanliness, the unseen guardian against decay. Yet despite his vital role, Panu carried a profound internal struggle. He felt as if he too was a vessel for waste, not just the physical kind he transported, but an inner, invisible burden. He felt he carried his own inner waste, unable to expel the poisons within him. These were not physical toxins, but the accumulated anxieties, the unexpressed sorrows, the quiet resentments that had gathered within him over the years, settling like heavy sediment in the depths of his being. He perceived them as impurities, as inner poisons that made him feel unclean, unworthy, and perpetually heavy. He longed for an internal purging, a way to rid himself of what he perceived as toxic within his own spirit. Just as he emptied the pails of the villagers, he yearned to empty himself, to feel light and clear and unburdened. He tried various methods of purging, seeking to rid himself of what he perceives as toxic. Sometimes, he would fast for days, hoping to cleanse his body and, by extension, his mind. Other times, he would spend hours in silent meditation, trying to force these unwanted thoughts and feelings away, to push them out of his consciousness. Much like forcing air from a bellows, he would engage in rigorous physical exercise, pushing his body to exhaustion, believing that through sheer effort he could sweat out the inner sludge. But always, the feelings would return, persistent and heavy, clinging to him like the scent of his work, a subtle, inescapable reminder of his perceived inner uncleanliness. Each night, as he walked his lonely rounds, the weight of the pails on his shoulders seemed to merge with the weight in his heart. The dark, fertile contents he carried away from the homes mirrored the dark, uncomfortable feelings he wanted to remove from himself. He saw his work as a constant reminder of everything he wished to expel, everything he deemed undesirable. The act of carrying for Panu was not just a physical task, but a metaphor for his own life, a life spent carrying what he considered to be the unwanted, the discarded, the unpurifiable. He yearned for a transformation, a change, but he believed it could only come through radical expulsion, through a complete and utter eradication of these inner burdens. His routine was meticulous, a silent dance with the fading night. He would approach each home with a respectful hush, exchange the full pails for clean, empty ones, and then carefully, methodically, carry the waste to the designated collection point outside the village. There, in the dimmest hours before dawn, he would empty the contents into a larger pit, covered and managed, a place where the village's collective waste was contained. He would then clean his pails with water and ash, ensuring they were ready for the next night's rounds, always striving for a perfect, unblemished cleanliness, both in his tools and, he hoped, eventually, within himself. One morning, as the first tentative fingers of light began to stretch across the eastern horizon, painting the sky with soft hues of lavender and rose, Panu was on his way back from the collection pit. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint, sweet scent of distant blossoms, a stark contrast to the odors of his work. He walked with his usual careful tread, his empty pails clinking softly, feeling the familiar, quiet ache in his shoulders and the persistent, low thrum of his inner disquiet. But as he rounded a bend in the path, his eyes caught something unexpected, a splash of vibrant color against the muted greens and browns of the awakening landscape. It was a patch of earth, a little off the main path, where he remembered, days earlier, he had accidentally stumbled, causing a small amount of night soil to spill from one of his pails. He had been frustrated by his clumsiness, annoyed by the imperfection, and had quickly covered the spill with a handful of loose earth, promising himself he would return later to ensure it was completely gone. He hadn't returned, the task slipping from his mind amidst the endless cycle of his work. Now, in that very spot, where he had expected to see only barren earth, or perhaps a lingering stain, he saw something remarkable. Delicate flowers, vibrant and full of life, bloomed with an astonishing intensity. Their petals, unfurling in the gentle morning light, were a riot of deep blues, soft yellows, and fiery reds, a testament to an unseen internal energy. They stood tall and proud, their leaves glistening with the morning dew, drawing nectar from the awakening sun. It was as if a tiny, secret garden had sprung forth overnight, impossibly beautiful, undeniably vital. Panu stopped, his feet rooted to the spot. He stared at the flowers, then at the earth beneath them, then back at the flowers, his mind slowly, gently piecing together the connection. This was the exact place of his perceived imperfection, his moment of clumsiness, the very spot where something he considered repugnant had been released. And from that very release, from that very waste, had sprung this breathtaking beauty. He saw, with a quiet wonder that settled deep in his bones, how waste transforms into nourishment, how what is expelled becomes the very basis for new life. The very substance he dedicated his nights to removing, the very thing he considered dirty and unwanted, was in fact the raw material for growth, for color, for fragrance, for the vibrant tapestry of existence. It was not meant for simple expulsion and disappearance, but for a profound transformation, an alchemical process of growth and change. A soft gasp escaped his lips, a sound of profound recognition. His own inner waste, he realized, was not meant for simple expulsion, but for a profound transformation, an alchemical process of growth and change. The anxieties, the sorrows, the resentments he carried within him were not simply poisons to be purged, but raw materials, fertile soil for a different kind of growth. They were not to be eradicated, but understood, accepted, and allowed to transform. His attempts to violently expel them were like trying to scoop out the earth that nourished the flowers, preventing the very process of life from unfolding. The weight he had felt for so long, the burden of his perceived inner uncleanliness, began to gently lift, like the morning mist dissolving with the sun. He looked at the vibrant flowers, now not just with wonder, but with a deep reverence. They were a living testament to a truth he had overlooked, that decay and renewal were not separate entities, but intertwined partners in the ceaseless dance of life, that what was deemed unclean could, in time and with the right conditions, become the very source of beauty and sustenance. His own perceived imperfections, his inner complexities, the very things he had fought so hard to banish, were not signs of his unworthiness, but rather the fertile ground from which new understanding, new compassion, and new wisdom could bloom. He didn't need to be empty. He needed to allow the natural process of transformation to occur. He didn't need to force anything out. He needed to create the space for it to change, to nourish something new within him. Panu stood there for a long time, the first rays of the sun warming his face, the vibrant colors of the wildflowers searing themselves into his memory. He felt a quiet, deep peace descend upon him, a profound sense of permission to simply be the complex, evolving being he was. His journey was not about cleansing himself to an empty, pristine state, but about allowing his experiences, even the uncomfortable ones, to become the rich soil from which his truest self could emerge, vibrant and full of life. The village was beginning to stir now. Wisps of cooking smoke curling from chimneys, the distant sound of a child's laugh. Panu took a deep, steadying breath, allowing the cool morning air to fill his lungs, feeling not depleted, but replenished. He picked up his pails, the familiar weight now feeling different, imbued with a new meaning. He saw the world and himself, not as a collection of things to be discarded or purified, but as a continuous, miraculous cycle of transformation. His work, once a heavy metaphor for his inner struggle, now became a quiet, daily reminder of life's profound capacity for renewal, for turning what is cast aside into the very foundation for beauty. He walked on, his steps lighter, carrying not just waste, but the silent, powerful promise of new life. The quiet wonder Bhanu had found in the alchemy of transformation gently faded into the soft hum of the waking world, a new understanding settling in the heart of the village. And in another quiet corner, not far from where the vibrant wildflowers now bloomed, lived a young woman whose own search for pattern and belonging was about to unfold in an unexpected way. Her name was Uma. She was in her late 20s, with quick, observant eyes that missed little, and hands that moved with a quiet, almost imperceptible grace. Uma's craft was a delicate and patient one. She was a gecko trainer, not for grand shows or entertainment, but for a far more practical, yet equally artful purpose. In a world where insects and pests could quickly become a nuisance, a well-trained gecko was a welcome resident in many homes, a silent, efficient guardian. Uma spent her days in a small, sun-dappled courtyard, surrounded by clay pots filled with fragrant herbs and climbing vines. Here, she would observe the geckos, studying their quick, darting movements, the almost imperceptible flicker of their tongues, the way they seemed to melt into the shadows, becoming one with the very surfaces they clung to. She understood their silent language, the subtle shifts in their scales, the slow blink of their ancient eyes. Her work was about cultivating a relationship, about inviting these wild creatures to choose a domestic life, to find their purpose within the structured comfort of human habitation. Yet, despite her mastery in creating a sense of belonging for these small, wild beings, Uma herself felt a profound lack of it. She saw the patterns in the geckos' lives, their hunting instincts, their territorial claims, their patient stillness. But in her own life, she felt untethered, without a clear pattern or true place. She yearned for the kind of stable, undeniable belonging she tried to foster in her geckos, a sense of being chosen and choosing to stay. She tried to find her own sense of place by mimicking their stillness, by studying the unspoken rules of the community, by trying to blend in. hoping that if she made herself useful and unobtrusive, belonging would naturally follow. But the feeling of being an outsider, of not quite fitting into any predefined pattern, persisted like a whisper in the quiet corners of her mind. Her method with the geckos was gentle, but firm. She would start with young geckos, captured carefully from the wild, and introduce them to the home environment gradually. She would teach them where the best hunting grounds were, near the warm glow of lamps where insects gathered. She showed them the safest crevices, high on walls, away from the curious paws of house pets or the sudden movements of humans. She created a rhythm for them, a predictable world where sustenance was readily available and safety assured. She taught them to associate the scent of specific herbs with calm and the sound of a certain chime with the offering of a particularly juicy beetle. It was a subtle training, not of command, but of gentle persuasion, of demonstrating the benefits of choosing to stay. One gecko, a particularly agile and intelligent male with vibrant green scales, had become a special project for Uma. She had named him Keto. Keto had adapted quickly, becoming a model resident in the home of a kind merchant, a home Uma herself visited often to ensure the geckos were thriving. Keto was always there, a steady, silent presence, a testament to Uma's skill and the effectiveness of her gentle methods. He was a small, living anchor for her own desire for belonging, a quiet reassurance that she could indeed create a place for herself, even if it was through the proxy of these small creatures. But one warm afternoon, as the sun dappled through the leaves of the mango tree in the merchant's courtyard, Uma arrived for her routine check, and Keto was gone. Not just hidden, as geckos often were, but truly absent. She searched all his usual spots, behind the hanging scroll, beneath the clay roof tiles, nestled in the folds of the window screen. He was nowhere to be found. A small, cold knot formed in Uma's stomach. She felt a familiar pang of disappointment, a sense of personal failure. All her efforts, all her patient training, all the careful creation of a welcoming environment seemed to have been for naught. Keto had chosen the wild over the home she had offered, the freedom of the outside over the belonging she had tried to cultivate. She returned to her own courtyard, the feeling of unanchoredness settling heavily upon her. If she couldn't even keep a gecko, a creature she had so carefully guided, how could she ever hope to find her own place, her own enduring pattern? Her efforts seemed to vanish, just like Keto, leaving her with the familiar echo of her own perceived untrainability. The quiet rustle of leaves in the breeze seemed to mock her, whispering of untamed wildness, of paths not chosen, of belonging not found. Days turned into weeks. Uma continued her work with other geckos, but the absence of Keto remained a subtle ache, a reminder of what she felt was her inability to truly hold or create lasting connection. She questioned her methods, wondering if she had been too gentle, too permissive, if she should have tried to exert more control, to make their belonging less of a choice and more of a requirement. Perhaps her own yearning for belonging made her too soft, too eager to please, preventing her from truly establishing the necessary boundaries. Then, one quiet morning, as Uma sat in the merchant's courtyard, tracing patterns in the dust with her finger, a flicker of movement caught her eye. High on the sun-warmed wall, near a cluster of vibrant bougainvillea, a gecko emerged from behind a loose tile. It was Keto. His scales seemed even more brilliant, his eyes bright and alert. A wave of relief, quickly followed by a rush of confusion, washed over Uma. He had returned, but that wasn't all. Behind Keto, cautiously emerging from the same crevice, were two smaller geckos. Young, their scales not yet as vibrant, but unmistakably of the same lineage. moving with a similar quiet confidence. They followed Quito, their tiny heads swiveling, their eyes taking in the new, inviting environment. Quito paused, looked at Uma with his ancient, knowing gaze, then turned and gently nudged one of the smaller geckos towards a sunlit patch where a fly buzzed. He was not just returning, he was leading. He was not just finding belonging for himself, he was extending it. Uma watched, her breath held in her throat. The scene unfolded like a slow-motion revelation. Quito had left. He had embraced the wild, the freedom she had feared would permanently pull him away. But in that freedom, he had not forgotten the haven, the invitation she had created. Instead, he had experienced the vastness of the outside world, perhaps even the challenges, and had then chosen to return, not just for himself, but to share the gift of belonging with others. He had become, in his own way, a trainer, a guide, an expander of the very invitation Uma had first offered. A profound understanding settled over Uma, as soft and gentle as the morning dew. Training, she realized, was not about rigid control, about holding fast to what she desired to keep. It wasn't about enforcing rules or creating an unbreakable cage, even one made of comfort and provision. It was, instead, about creating an environment, a reason, a compelling invitation for return. It was about offering a space where choice and connection could coexist, where freedom was not the enemy of belonging, but its very foundation. Quito had left because he was free to leave, and he had returned, bringing others because he was free to return, and because the invitation, the welcoming space Uma had cultivated, was still there, open and accepting. His departure had not been a rejection of her efforts, but a testament to the trust she had built, a trust that allowed him to explore, to grow, and ultimately, to choose. She understood then that freedom and belonging were not opposites, but two sides of the same gentle invitation. Her own yearning for pattern and place, her own struggle to belong, was not about finding a rigid structure to conform to, or a tight grip to hold on to. It was about creating that invitation for herself, within herself. It was about offering herself the freedom to explore, to wander, to be without a fixed pattern, knowing that the spaciousness she cultivated within would always be a welcoming home, a reason to return to her own core. The quiet sigh that left her lips was not one of sadness or resignation, but of deep, gentle release. The burden of feeling untrained, of lacking a clear pattern, began to lift. She didn't need to force herself into a mold or to control the circumstances of her life to find her place. She simply needed to create the conditions for her own return, to offer herself the gentle invitation to simply be, to connect, to find her own rhythms, knowing that her true belonging was not something to be captured, but something to be cultivated through choice and acceptance. Uma looked at Quito, now silently guiding the smaller geckos to sip from a drop of water clinging to a leaf. She saw not just a trained gecko, but a teacher, a gentle mirror reflecting a truth she had overlooked. Her work, her life, was not about holding fast, but about creating an open hand, a welcoming space. It was about trust. Trust in the cycle of leaving and returning. Trust in the wisdom of choice. Trust in the quiet power of invitation. She rose slowly, her movements imbued with a new lightness. The courtyard felt different now, not just a place of work, but a living testament to the interplay of freedom and connection. She walked towards her own small dwelling, the soft afternoon light warming her face. She carried with her not a sense of failure, but a profound sense of peace, a quiet knowing that her own journey of belonging was not about finding a destination, but about continually extending the invitation to herself to simply be, and to allow the wild, beautiful dance of her life to unfold, always with the option to return to the quiet sanctuary she had learned to build within. With a quiet sense of homecoming, we turn our gaze now to another soul, a man whose life was attuned to the subtle vibrations of the earth, yet who often felt a tremor within himself that he could not decipher. His name was Indra, a rain diviner, a man in his early 40s, whose purpose was to feel the approach of water, to sense the promise of sustenance in the trembling of his copper rods. Indra lived on the edge of a vast, sun-baked plain, where the sky stretched endlessly, and the earth cracked under the relentless heat for much of the year. His dwelling was simple, made of sun-dried brick and thatched straw, designed to offer what little coolness it could against the oppressive glare. His hands were strong, accustomed to the weight of his divining tools, yet they moved with a sensitivity that belied their strength. His eyes, often squinted against the bright light, held a deep thoughtfulness, forever searching the horizon, not just for clouds, but for the invisible whispers that preceded them. He was known for his uncanny ability to predict the coming rains. With his 2 long, slender copper rods held loosely in his hands, pointing slightly downward, he would walk the parched fields. The rods, he believed, were extensions of his own sensitive being, resonating with the presence of hidden springs or the distant atmospheric shifts that promised a downpour. When they trembled, when their tips began to pull and cross, it was a signal, a profound communication from the very pulse of the earth. For Indra, this was not just a skill, it was a sacred trust, a connection to the lifeblood of his community, a promise of renewal for all who lived under the endless sky. Yet, for all his attunement to the external weather, Indra felt a profound blindness to his own inner storms. His own moods, his own surges of sadness or anger, his unexpected moments of elation or despair, often caught him unawares, leaving him feeling buffeted and unprepared, much like a traveler caught in a sudden, unpredicted downpour. He would feel a knot tighten in his stomach, a quickening in his chest, a sudden wave of irritation, and he would wonder, why did this come? Where was the sign? The warning? He longed for a similar divination for his own life, a way to predict his personal weather, to understand the subtle tremblings within before they broke forth into a storm or a calm. He sought an external anchor for his internal world, a copper rod for his soul, hoping it would guide him through the unpredictable landscape of his own emotions. He had tried, in his quiet way, to observe his own body, his own thoughts, much as he observed the sky. He would sit in stillness, attempting to feel the first stirrings of an emotion, to trace its origin, to predict its trajectory. But the internal landscape felt far more chaotic, far less predictable than the grand, slow movements of the weather systems he divined. His own desires, especially, felt like silent, unseen currents, pulling him this way and that, often leaving him feeling lost or suddenly adrift, without warning. It was during a particularly long and parching drought that Indra's understanding was truly tested. The sun beat down mercilessly, day after day, week after week. The river, usually a gentle ribbon of life, had shrunk to a mere trickle. The fields were dust, the leaves on the trees curled and brittle. Hope dwindled with each cloudless dawn, and the villagers looked to Indra with increasing desperation, their eyes pleading for any sign, any promise. Indra walked the fields tirelessly, his rods held with a solemn determination. He felt the weight of their collective longing, the quiet anxiety that hummed beneath the surface of daily life. He tried every known technique, every subtle shift in his grip, every meditative focus, to find the deep, hidden moisture, to sense the far-off rain. For days, the rods remained still, unmoving, heavy and cold in his hands, reflecting the bleakness of the sky. Then, one sweltering afternoon, as the air shimmered with heat and the silence was broken only by the distant buzz of insects, something shifted. Indra was standing near the edge of a dry riverbed, the cracked earth stretching out before him like a broken mosaic. He held his rods, his brow furrowed in concentration, when, almost imperceptibly at first, they began to tremble. It was a faint vibration, a delicate shiver, a familiar sensation that sent a jolt of anticipation through him. He tightened his grip, focusing his entire being on the sensation. The trembling grew, becoming more insistent, more undeniable. The tips of the copper rods began to pull, to cross, to dip with an intensity he had rarely experienced. This was not a subtle hint. This was a powerful, unequivocal signal. Rain. Deep, abundant rain. It was coming. It had to be. A surge of relief, almost dizzying in its force, washed over him. He felt the collective hope of the village coalesce within him, reflected in the vibrant tremor of the copper. He walked, following the insistent pull, feeling the rods tugging him onward, leading him to where the ground felt most alive with the promise of water. He could almost taste the cool, damp air, almost hear the drumming of raindrops on the parched earth. This was it. The long wait was over. He returned to the village, his face alight with a quiet certainty. "It is coming," he announced, his voice steady despite the tremor that still lingered in his hands. "The rods, they have never trembled with such strength. The rain will be here soon." A ripple of cautious hope, then burgeoning excitement, spread through the community. Children ran out to look at the sky. Adults began to prepare their water storage. A palpable lightness descended upon the weary village. Indra waited. He sat outside his dwelling, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his ears straining for the distant rumble of thunder. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, but no clouds gathered. The air remained still, heavy, dry. The hours stretched into evening, then deep night. The stars emerged, brilliant and countless, but no moonlit clouds sailed across their luminous path. The silence that followed was profound, deeper than the usual quiet of the night. It was a silence of absence, of expectation unmet. The air, which should have been growing heavy with moisture, remained thin and dry. Indra sat there, unmoving, long after the last hopeful villager had retired to their home. He felt the profound disappointment settle over him, not just for himself, but for the entire community. The rods had been so certain, so undeniable. Yet, the sky remained clear, vast, and empty of rain. He looked at the copper rods, now lying inert beside him, cool and silent. He picked one up, felt its smooth, cold surface. What had it been, he wondered? What had caused such an intense, undeniable tremor, if not the approach of water? He replayed the sensation in his mind, the sudden, powerful pull, the insistent crossing, the almost violent vibration that had filled his hands with certainty. And then, in that moment of profound disappointment, as the last vestiges of hope for rain evaporated with the morning mist, a quiet understanding began to settle over him. He felt an ache deep within his own chest, a hollow, yearning sensation. It was the echo of that intense trembling. It was the feeling of his own desperate longing, his own ardent wish for the rain, for the relief it would bring, for the life it would restore. The rods, he realized, had not trembled for the water itself, for the external, incoming rain. They had trembled for him. They had trembled with his own deep, aching hope, with the collective desire of the village, with the profound, unspoken yearning that had resonated through him and into the copper. The intensity he had felt, the undeniable pull, had been the very force of his own expectation, his own desire made manifest through the sensitivity of his tools. This insight brought a quiet, almost startling clarity. His inner storms, he understood then, his personal weather, the sudden shifts of emotion that so often surprised him, they too, perhaps, did not always come from fate or some external, unpredictable force. Often, they came from the trembling of his own desires and expectations. The sudden surge of anger, perhaps a deep desire for things to be different. The unexpected wave of sadness, perhaps a profound hope for connection that felt unmet. The trembling itself, he learned, was a form of knowing. It was a signal, not always of what would be, but of what was within him. It was the heart's own language, articulating its deepest longings, its most fervent hopes, its quietest fears. The rods, in their stillness now, taught him a different kind of divination, a divination of the self. He sat very still, the cool night air a balm on his skin. He realized he had been seeking a warning, a sign for his own life, outside of himself. But the signs were always within, in the subtle tremors of his own being, in the silent, insistent pull of his desires. To feel the trembling was to know the depth of his own hope, to acknowledge the landscape of his own internal world, not as a blind, unpredictable force, but as a rich, communicative tapestry. The disappointment for the lost rain still lingered, a soft ache, but it was now tempered by this new, profound understanding. He had not been blind after all. He had simply been misinterpreting the signal. The trembling was not a failure of prediction. It was a success of internal revelation. Indra closed his eyes, taking a slow, deep breath. He felt the subtle tremor of his own heartbeat, the quiet hum of his own life force. This, too, was a trembling, a constant, gentle vibration of being, and in that, he found a new kind of peace. He didn't need to control the internal weather or predict its every shift. He simply needed to listen to its tremblings, to acknowledge them, to understand that these deep feelings were not something to be feared or expelled, but a profound form of knowing, a constant, gentle communication from the very core of his own being. He would still walk the fields with his copper rods, sensing the water for his community. But now, he would also walk the inner fields of his own heart, his own awareness, listening to the tremblings there, understanding them not as blind forces, but as the sensitive, honest signals of his own deepest desires, his own most fervent hopes. The disappointment of the unfallen rain had become, for Indra, a profound teacher, revealing the rich, complex landscape of his own inner world and inviting him to simply feel, to simply know, the gentle, insistent trembling of his own living hope. We have journeyed together, quietly, through the lives of many earnest souls. We have watched Gautam, the shadow puppet master, learn the freedom found in relinquishing control, allowing the unpredictable dance of light and darkness to tell a richer story than any rigid plan. We witnessed Asha, the dew collector, come to understand that value is not in permanence or capture, but in the quiet act of delivery, letting go so that life might be nourished. We saw Vivek, the bellows operator, discover that a flaw, a tear in the fabric of what he thought was perfect, could become an unexpected source of refreshment, a cooling breath amidst the heat of his toil. And just recently, we sat with Indra, the rain diviner, as he gently untangled the trembling of his copper rods from the external weather, recognizing it instead as the profound internal tremor of his own deepest hopes and expectations. Each of these journeys, in its own gentle way, has brought us closer to a central truth, one that whispers through the rustling leaves and the flowing waters of this quiet world. It is the truth of anicca, of impermanence, the ceaseless flow of all things. It is the understanding that nothing stays, nothing can be held, and that within this constant flux lies not a threat, but a profound invitation. Imagine, if you will, a river, not a raging torrent, but a wide, slow-moving river, its surface reflecting the soft light of the sky, its depths carrying the silent wisdom of ages. The river flows. It never stops. It moves around bends, over smooth stones, past ancient trees that dip their branches into its cool embrace. It is a constant, a gentle force that shapes the land not through violence, but through its persistent, unyielding movement. The water itself is never the same from one moment to the next. The droplet that brushes against a mossy bank now is already gone, replaced by another, and then another. There is no holding, no grasping, no permanence in the river itself, only an eternal, flowing presence. And along the banks of this river, or sometimes even within its current, there are stones. Some are small, rounded by countless seasons of gentle abrasion. Others are large, ancient boulders, deeply embedded in the earth, seemingly unmoving. These stones, in their very nature, resist the river. They stand against its flow. They are solid, fixed, yearning for permanence in a world of ceaseless change. They try to hold their place, to remain exactly as they are, to defy the soft, insistent pressure of the water. When we observe these stones, we see that their resistance creates friction. The water swirls around them, sometimes creating small eddies, sometimes a gentle ripple. And though the stone may feel it is holding firm, the river, in its patient, unceasing movement, slowly, subtly, begins to shape it. A sharp edge softens. A rough surface becomes smooth. Over time, the stone that once felt so solid, so defiant, becomes a testament to the quiet power of flow. It has not been broken by force, but transformed by persistent, gentle passing. This gentle, ceaseless flow of the river is much like the flow of life itself. Life moves, it shifts, it changes. Nothing is truly permanent. The moment we are in now is already passing, giving way to the next. The feelings that arise within us, the thoughts that flicker through our minds, the circumstances that surround us, all are like the water of the river, constantly moving, constantly transforming. But often, within us, there is a part that acts like the stone. It desires permanence. It yearns for control. It wants things to stay as they are, or to become exactly as we imagine them to be. We grasp at moments of happiness, hoping to hold them indefinitely. We resist moments of sadness or discomfort, wishing they would simply vanish and leave no trace. We cling to outcomes, to plans, to expectations, much like the stone clings to its place in the riverbed. And what happens when we cling? When we resist the natural flow? We create friction. We generate inner turbulence. Like the water swirling around the resistant stone, our minds churn. Our hearts ache with the effort of holding fast to what cannot be held, or pushing away what is simply present. We experience a sense of struggle, a feeling of being at odds with the very current of life. Remember Gautam, who wanted to control the shadows, to make his art solid and permanent, to step out of the flickering light into a fixed, clear presence. His attempts to grasp, led to frustration, to a feeling of lack. But when the lamp flickered, when the shadows danced beyond his control, when he allowed the impermanent to simply be, a richer beauty emerged, a deeper story unfolded. He stopped resisting the nature of shadows, and in that letting go, found a new kind of mastery. Think of Asha, who believed her efforts were vanishing, her precious dew evaporating into nothingness. She resisted the idea of impermanence, of transformation, wanting to capture and hold. Her efforts to make the dew last, to prevent its natural course, were like the stone resisting the river. But when she allowed herself to truly see the vanishing, to understand it as a delivery, a transformation into nourishment, her sense of loss dissolved. The dew was not gone. It had simply flowed to its next destination. And Vivek, who felt his breath was taken, never returned, always flowing out without replenishment. He resisted the perceived drain, the constant giving. Yet, when the bellows tore, when the unexpected flaw created an unplanned flow of air, a cool breeze, he found a hidden benefit, a gentle replenishment. The brokenness, the imperfect flow, became a gift, teaching him that even in giving, there can be receiving. Even in imperfection, there can be ease. Each of them, in their own way, encountered the ceaseless flow of life and, initially, resisted it. Gautam resisted the impermanence of shadows. Asha resisted the impermanence of dew. Vivek resisted the impermanence of his own breath, the constant giving. But in the quiet moments of observation, in the unexpected shifts of their daily work, they each discovered that the friction, the struggle, arose not from the flow itself, but from their own resistance to it. This is the gentle teaching of the river. It does not ask the stone to disappear. It does not demand that it cease to be. It simply continues its journey, patiently, ceaselessly. And in that patient persistence, it gradually, gently transforms what resists it. The river of life does the same. It does not ask us to change who we are or to eliminate our feelings. It simply flows. And when we learn to notice where we become like the stone, where we stiffen, where we cling, where we push away the natural unfolding of things, we begin to find a quiet power in simply allowing, not a passive surrender, but an active, gentle allowing, an allowing that says, yes, this moment is as it is, this feeling is present, this change is happening. This does not mean we do not act. The river, after all, is a force of action, but it means our actions arise from a place of presence and acceptance, rather than from a place of resistance and struggle. We can still navigate the river, but we do so with its current, rather than fighting against it. Consider your own life now, in this quiet moment. Where do you feel the subtle tug of resistance? Perhaps it is a thought you wish would vanish, a feeling you wish would not be present, a circumstance you wish were different. Perhaps it is a memory you cling to, or a future you desperately try to control. Can you feel the friction that arises in those moments? The tightness in your body, the churning in your mind, the subtle ache in your heart? This friction is not a flaw. It is simply a signal. It tells you where you are standing like the stone, attempting to hold fast against the ceaseless flow. It is an invitation to simply notice without judgment that you are resisting. And in that noticing, in that gentle awareness, a choice arises. You do not need to force yourself to let go. You do not need to demand that the river change its course. You can simply, softly, allow the thought to be present without grasping or pushing. Allow the feeling to move through you like a cloud passing across the sky. Allow the present moment to unfold without needing it to be other than it is. The quiet power of simply allowing is not about giving up. It is about understanding that true strength often lies not in rigid control, but in supple adaptability. It is in the wisdom of the willow tree, which bends with the wind rather than breaking. It is in the wisdom of the water itself, which finds its way around every obstacle, not by force, but by persistent flow. When we allow, we move from friction to ease. We find a quiet rest in the midst of change. We begin to understand that our deepest peace does not come from making the world static, but from learning to flow with its inherent, beautiful, impermanent nature. The river continues to move always, and we too can learn to move with it, finding our own path, our own gentle current, within the larger, boundless flow of life itself. Take a gentle breath now. Feel the soft rise and fall of your chest, a quiet current within you. Notice that this breath too is impermanent. Each inhale passes, each exhale transforms, and in that simple, natural flow, there is a quiet, profound wisdom. Simply allow your breath to be as it is, without needing to change it, without needing to control it. Just feel the gentle, ceaseless flow. We have felt the gentle current of impermanence, the ceaseless flow that shapes all things, inviting us to release our grip, to find ease in allowing. Now let us turn our gaze to another profound truth, woven into the fabric of existence, a truth that liberates us from the quiet ache of separation and reminds us of our deepest belonging. This truth is the interconnectedness of all things, the understanding that nothing exists in isolation, that every leaf, every breath, every ripple on the water is intimately linked to everything else. In the ancient teachings, this is known as pratyasamutpada, a word that simply means dependent arising. It is the dance of cause and effect, the intricate web where each strand supports and is supported by all the others. Consider the dew that Asha, the collector, once felt was simply vanishing, lost to the rising sun. She believed her efforts were fleeting, her precious drops dissolving into nothingness, leaving her with an empty feeling, a sense of loss. She felt a separation between her diligent work and any lasting impact. But when she truly saw, when she allowed her mind to settle and her eyes to open, she witnessed the plants themselves actively drinking the dew as it formed. Her efforts were not evaporating into a void. They were transforming. They were becoming the very lifeblood of the leaves, nourishing them, allowing them to unfurl and grow. The dew she gathered, or the dew she simply observed, was not lost. It was delivered. It flowed from the cool morning air to the leaf, to the plant's roots, sustaining its life, which in turn released oxygen, which in turn became part of the very air Asha breathed. Her gentle act of collection, or even her mere presence as an observer, was a thread in a vast unseen tapestry, connecting her to the green life around her, to the very breath of the world. Her perceived loss was, in fact, an essential delivery, a vital link in the endless chain of life. She was not separate from the natural world. She was an intrinsic part of its giving and receiving. And think of Bhanu, the night soil carrier, who felt he carried his own inner waste, his own poisons, seeking to expel them, to rid himself of what he perceived as toxic and separate from beauty. He believed these things were isolated impurities, to be cast away and forgotten. Yet, in that quiet morning light, he saw the delicate flowers, vibrant and full of life, blooming where he had accidentally spilled the night soil days before. What he once saw as mere waste, as something to be separated from, had become nourishment. It had transformed through the intricate alchemy of the earth into the very basis for new life, for color and fragrance. The waste was not simply expelled, it was reborn. It became the soil, which fed the roots, which supported the stem, which offered the blossom. Panu's labor, which he perceived as carrying a burden, was in fact an act of profound transformation, a silent contribution to the cycle of growth and renewal. He was connected not just to the removal of what was unwanted, but to the creation of what was beautiful. His hands, though carrying what was discarded, were also tending to the genesis of new life. He was a silent partner in the earth's ceaseless dance of transformation. And Uma, the gecko trainer, who felt untrained herself, without pattern or true belonging, who sought to control and define the boundaries of her trained companions. She believed her efforts were about individual mastery, about keeping each gecko contained and loyal to her home. She felt a pang of loss when her trusted gecko disappeared into the wild, believing it had severed its connection to her, to its home, to the patterns she had established. But weeks later, the gecko returned, and it was not alone. It brought others with it, drawn by the same gentle invitation, the same sense of safety and provision. Uma's training, her nurturing, her creation of a welcoming space had not been about rigid control, but about creating an environment, a reason for connection. Her single act of care had rippled outwards, extending an invitation that brought not just one, but many, into her gentle orbit. She was connected not only to the individual gecko she had trained, but to the wider family of geckos, to the intricate balance of the ecosystem in her home, to the very principle of belonging through invitation rather than force. Her quiet effort had blossomed into a wider community, a growing web of life drawn to the space she had created. These stories, like many others, gently guide us towards a deeper understanding that we are all threads in a vast, intricate tapestry. Master Kenji, with his soft, knowing eyes, once sat by a loom in a quiet village, watching a weaver's deft hands. The weaver worked with threads of silk and cotton, indigo and saffron, creating a landscape of rolling hills and a sky full of cranes. One day, a young apprentice, frustrated with a single tangled thread, wanted to cut it out. "This thread," he complained, "is too short. It is the wrong color for this section. It is causing the whole pattern to falter." Master Kenji, observing the apprentice's struggle, gently took the thread in his own gnarled hands. "Look closely," he murmured, his voice a low hum. "This thread, in its shortness, must be joined to another. In its perceived wrongness of color, it creates a subtle shift, a nuance that the eye might not immediately grasp, but that the overall beauty requires, and in its tangles, it reminds the hand to be patient, to find the way through, not to sever." He continued, his gaze sweeping over the vast, half-finished tapestry. "Imagine if every thread, deemed imperfect or insignificant, were cut away. What would remain? A gaping hole, a weakness, an absence. The tapestry would lose its integrity, its strength, its very essence. No single thread, however small, however seemingly flawed, can be removed without affecting the whole, and no single thread, in its apparent perfection, can create the entire image alone." The apprentice truly looked at the tapestry. He saw how a dark thread next to a light one made the light thread seem brighter. He saw how a tiny knot, once smoothed, added a subtle texture. He saw how his own thread, once woven in, contributed to the gentle curve of a crane's wing, a small but essential part of its flight. Master Kenji smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "So it is with all of life. We are each a thread. Sometimes we feel too short, or the wrong color, or tangled in our own way. We may believe we are insignificant, or that our problems are ours alone, separate from the grand design. But every one of us, every experience, every challenge, every act of kindness or moment of struggle is interwoven. He paused, allowing his words to settle. The dew that nourishes the plant, the waste that feeds the flower, the gecko that returns with companions, none of these exist in isolation. They are all expressions of this profound interconnectedness. Your breath is connected to the distant trees. Your smile ripples outwards, however subtly. Your quiet struggle, too, is held within the larger fabric of humanity's shared experience. This deep understanding of interconnectedness gently releases the heavy burden of individual isolation. When we believe we are separate, that our joys and sorrows are ours alone, that our efforts vanish into nothingness, we feel a profound aloneness. We feel as though we must carry the weight of existence on our own shoulders. But when we begin to perceive the intricate web, we realize we are never truly alone. Every challenge we face is a thread. Every insight we gain is a thread. Every person we encounter, every animal, every plant, every drop of water, every particle of dust, all are threads. And they are all woven together, creating a tapestry of such immense beauty and complexity that our minds can only begin to glimpse its wonders. We are held, supported, and continuously influenced by everything around us, just as we, in turn, influence everything else. This realization fosters a sense of gentle belonging. It reminds us that even in our quietest moments, we are part of something vast and ancient, something ceaselessly unfolding. Our smallest actions, our most fleeting thoughts, our deepest desires, all contribute to the larger dance. We are not just participants, we are the very fabric of the dance itself. There is no need to strive for connection. Connection is the inherent nature of reality. There is only a need to notice it, to gently open our awareness to the intricate dance of existence that is always, always unfolding around us and within us. Cultivate a quiet appreciation now for this intricate dance. Notice the air that flows in and out of your body, connecting you to the furthest reaches of the sky, to every living thing that breathes. Feel the support beneath you, connecting you to the earth, to the ancient stones, to the flowing rivers deep beneath the surface. Listen to the subtle sounds around you, each one a thread in the soundscape of this moment, connecting you to what is near and what is far. Allow this sense of gentle belonging to settle within you, like a soft, warm shawl. You are not a solitary island. You are a vital part of a boundless ocean. You are not a single, isolated note. You are an essential part of a grand, ceaseless symphony. You are not a separate thread, but an indispensable part of the magnificent tapestry of life. Take a gentle breath now. Feel the air fill your lungs, then softly release. Notice how your breath is not just yours, but also a part of the air that moves through the leaves of a distant tree, that touches the surface of a far-off lake. Feel the connection. Inhale, a deep, quiet drawing in. Exhale, a soft, complete letting go. Allow yourself to simply rest in this gentle understanding of your own profound and beautiful interconnectedness. Rest in this intricate dance. Resting in this intricate dance, this profound interconnectedness, we often find ourselves still asking, who is this one dancing? Who is this one that feels connected? Even amidst the vastness, we carry a sense of our own distinct being, our own individual self, with its unique stories, its triumphs, and its struggles. And it is this very sense of self, when rigidly held, that can become a source of quiet burden. Tonight, we turn our gaze gently towards the spaciousness that lies beyond this fixed idea of who we believe ourselves to be. We will explore the teaching of anatta, not as an absence or a void, but as a boundless openness, a freedom that arises when we loosen our grip on a singular, unchanging self. Remember Gautam, the shadow puppet master, who felt he lived in shadows, yearning for a tangible presence, for a substance he felt he lacked in his own life. He believed his worth lay in stepping out of the shadows, in a direct, unyielding light, in a fixed, undeniable form. He sought to control his puppets, to control the narrative, to control his own image. His struggle was a quiet, clinging to an idea of Gautam that needed to be solid, visible, and perfectly defined. And Param, the vulture watcher, whose task it was to discern death from the circling patterns of birds. He felt his own life was similarly circled by an invisible, inevitable doom. He saw himself as one whose fate was predetermined, an individual trajectory heading towards a fixed end. His fear was rooted in a rigid understanding of Param, a self that was vulnerable, alone, and subject to an unyielding external force. He tried to distract the birds, to change his vantage point, to escape what he believed was his personal destiny. Then there was Kanti, the smoke signal reader on her lonely watchtower. She was adept at interpreting distant warnings, yet her own distress signals seemed unseen, unreceived. Her problem was a deep yearning for visible validation, for a clear response to her plight. She felt that her messages, her truth, needed to be acknowledged externally to truly exist. Her sense of self was tied to being seen, to being heard, to receiving a clear, undeniable echo of her own existence. Without that, she felt unseen, unheard, unconfirmed. And Sanjay, the mirror polisher, who created flawless bronze mirrors that reflected truth for nobles. Yet, his own truth felt tarnished, complex, beyond any polishing. He sought a singular, clear clarity for himself, for his identity. He believed that he needed to be perfectly smooth, perfectly reflective, without any perceived flaws or complexities. His struggle was with the belief that his true self was somehow hidden or corrupted, requiring endless effort to polish away what he saw as imperfections. In each of these earnest souls, we can perceive a quiet clinging, a clinging to a fixed idea of who they were or who they should be. Gautam clung to an image of solidity. Param clung to a narrative of fate. Kanti clung to the need for external validation of her existence. Sanjay clung to the ideal of a flawless self. These were not malicious clingings, but simply the natural human tendency to define and hold fast to something we call I. But what if this I is not a solid, unchanging thing, but something far more vast and open? Imagine the sky. The sky holds the clouds, the rain, the sun, the moon, the stars. It holds the thunder and the lightning, the gentle breeze and the fierce storm. It is the backdrop for all phenomena. But the sky is not the clouds. The sky is not the rain. The sky is not the sun. When the clouds gather, the sky remains. When the storm rages, the sky remains. When the sun sets, the sky remains. It is the vast, open, unchanging space in which everything arises and passes. In the same gentle way, our true nature is like that boundless sky. Our thoughts, our emotions, our roles, our problems, our perceived flaws, these are like the clouds passing through. They are real in their appearance. They can be dense or light, joyful or sorrowful, but they are not the sky itself. They arise, they linger, and they pass. But the vast open spaciousness of our awareness, our fundamental being, remains. It is not defined by the passing show. It simply holds it all. When Gautam yearned for substance, he was seeking to solidify a cloud, mistaking it for the sky. When Param felt circled by doom, he saw only the dark clouds, forgetting the boundless blue above them. When Kanti felt unseen, she was searching for her reflection in a passing cloud, rather than resting in the vastness that held all seeing. And when Sanjay sought to polish away his perceived tarnish, he was trying to smooth out the texture of a cloud, rather than recognizing the clear sky that was always present behind it. Our true nature is not our roles, however important they may feel. It is not our problems, however pressing they may appear. It is not our perceived flaws, however deeply we may feel them. These are all temporary formations, like clouds in the sky. To cling to them, to define ourselves solely by them, is to limit the vastness of our own being. Master Kenji, with his serene face and knowing eyes, once spoke to a group of seekers who were discussing the nature of the self. He listened patiently as they debated what made them distinct, what made them them. After a long silence, he rose and pointed to a small house nestled in the valley below. "Look at that house," he said, his voice a soft, melodic hum. "It has walls, a roof, windows, doors. These define its shape, its appearance. Inside it has rooms, a kitchen, a sleeping chamber, a place for quiet contemplation. The walls create these rooms, giving them purpose and identity." He paused, allowing their gaze to follow his. But what makes the house truly useful? Is it the walls? Is it the roof? Or is it the space within? The walls? Within the rooms? Without that open space, the house would be a solid block, unusable. The space itself has no walls, no roof, no fixed identity. Yet, it is the very essence of what allows the house to be a home, a shelter, a place of gathering. He looked at each of them in turn. So it is with our self. Our body, our mind, our memories, our personality, our roles. These are like the walls and rooms. They give us form. They give us identity in the world. They allow us to interact and engage. But our true nature, the essence of who we are, is like the spaciousness within the house. It is vast, open, undefined, and unburdened. It is the fundamental capacity to experience, to be, to simply exist. It is not confined by the walls of our temporary identities. This understanding invites a gentle release from the heavy burden of a fixed identity. We spend so much energy trying to maintain a particular image of ourselves, trying to be consistent, trying to live up to expectations, either our own or those of others. We carry the weight of our past stories, believing they define us irrevocably. We worry about our future, fearing that a change might diminish who we are. But when we realize that our true nature is this vast, open spaciousness, we are no longer so confined. We can allow our roles to shift, our emotions to flow, our thoughts to come and go, without feeling that our fundamental self is threatened or diminished. We become like the sky, holding all phenomena with equanimity, knowing that none of it can truly harm or alter our boundless nature. This spaciousness allows for greater freedom and adaptability. When we are not rigidly defined by our past mistakes, we are free to learn and grow. When we are not clinging to a particular role, we are free to embrace new experiences. When we are not trying to be a fixed, solid self, we become more fluid, more responsive, more capable of navigating the ceaseless changes of life. We can adapt, not by forcing ourselves into a new mold, but by simply allowing our inherent spaciousness to express itself in new ways. It is a profound liberation to realize that the self we often strive so hard to protect, to define, to improve, is not the deepest truth of our being. The deepest truth is the vast, open, clear space that holds all of it. This space is beyond definition, beyond judgment, beyond flaw or perfection. It simply is. And in this spaciousness, there is no need to prove anything, no need to perform, no need to be anything other than what you already are in your deepest essence. The burden of maintaining a fixed identity begins to lift, like the morning mist dissolving into the vastness of the sky. This spaciousness is always present, always available. It is not something you need to acquire or create. It is simply who you are, beneath all the layers of conditioning and story. It is the fundamental ground of your being. Allow yourself now to gently rest in this understanding. Invite a sense of spaciousness into your own experience. Notice that you are not just your thoughts, but the awareness that holds the thoughts. You are not just your emotions, but the vastness in which emotions arise and pass. You are not just your body, but the open presence that inhabits and perceives the body. Take a gentle breath now, noticing how the air fills your lungs and how, in that moment, there is a space, an openness. And as you softly release the breath, feel that space expand, not just within your body, but all around you. Inhale, drawing in a sense of quiet expansion. Exhale, releasing any sense of limitation, any fixed idea of who you are. Feel the support beneath you, not as something holding a solid you, but as the earth holding an open, unburdened presence. Allow your mind to drift gently into this spaciousness, this boundless openness that is your true nature. Rest here, in the quiet freedom of not self. Simply rest. And now, having rested in this spaciousness, this boundless openness that is your true nature, we can turn our attention to another aspect of our human experience, one that often arises when we cling to the very things that are, by nature, ungraspable. We speak now of dukkha, not as suffering in its starkest form, but as the subtle friction, the underlying unsatisfactoriness that arises from our deep-seated desire for knowing and control. It is the slight misalignment, the gentle rub that occurs when our expectations meet the fluid, ever-changing reality of life. We are, by habit, creatures who seek certainty. We yearn to know what will happen next, to understand the causes and effects, to have a clear map of our journey. And when that map is obscured, when the future is hazy, or when the present defies our understanding, a quiet discomfort can arise. We tighten our grip. We strive harder to see, to predict, to eliminate what we perceive as unwanted. But this very striving, this clinging to knowing and control, often becomes the source of the friction itself. Recall Indra, the rain diviner, whose copper rods would tremble, sensing the approach of water. He relied on them, on his skill, to predict the future, to warn of inner storms and coming weather. Yet, in a time of profound drought, when his village was parched and desperate, his rods trembled with an undeniable intensity. He felt the imminence of rain, the certainty of it, in his very bones. But no rain came. The sky remained an empty, unrelenting blue. In that moment of profound disappointment, a quiet understanding dawned upon him. The trembling, he realized, was not the water's approach at all. It was his own deep, aching hope for it. It was the trembling of his own desires, his own yearning for a particular outcome. He had sought certainty in an external sign, but had found instead the echo of his own internal expectation. His inner storms, he understood, might not always be warnings of external fate, but rather the reverberations of his own longing, his own resistance to the stark, dry reality. The friction came not from the absence of rain, but from his clinging to the knowing that it should come. that his rods should predict it. Then there was Rupa, the leech collector, who understood the delicate balance of her medicinal creatures. She knew which leeches drew poison and which drew too much, yet she felt invisibly drained herself, her life force slowly ebbing away. She tried to protect herself, to build barriers against these unseen forces, to understand and control the mysterious siphoning of her own energy. She longed for the certainty of safety, the knowledge that she was secure from whatever it was that depleted her. Her struggle was born from her intense desire to eliminate this discomfort, to purge the unseen, to grasp the reins of her own vitality. But one quiet afternoon, as she observed a leech dropping off a patient, plump and satisfied, once its work was complete, a deep insight settled within her. Even parasites, she realized, have their limits. They will eventually have enough and release their hold. The draining, the discomfort, the fear of the unknown, these too would eventually reach their capacity and let go. The ease came not from eliminating the draining, but from allowing the natural cycle to unfold, from releasing her resistance to the unknown duration of its grip. She found a quiet peace in the acceptance that even discomfort has its own lifespan. The friction had come from her fierce resistance, her longing to know how to stop it, how to control it. And we remember Bhanu, the night soil carrier, who removed waste from homes before dawn. He felt he carried his own inner waste, unable to expel the poisons within him. He tried various methods of purging, seeking to rid himself of what he perceived as toxic, believing that true purity lay in absolute elimination. He clung to the idea that some parts of himself were simply bad to be cast out, and this clinging created a deep internal struggle. He longed for the certainty of being clean, for the control to simply remove what he deemed undesirable. But one morning, as the first light touched the earth, Bhanu noticed something remarkable. Delicate flowers, vibrant and full of life, growing in a spot where he had accidentally spilled night soil days earlier. He saw, with quiet wonder, how waste transformed into nourishment, how what was expelled became the very basis for new life. His own inner waste, he realized, was not meant for simple expulsion, but for a profound transformation, an alchemical process of growth and change. The friction had come from his fierce resistance to what he perceived as poison, his desire to eliminate it, rather than allowing for its natural, mysterious evolution. He had clung to the idea of a fixed, undesirable state, rather than opening to the unknowing of its potential. In each of these stories, the struggle arose not from the situation itself, the drought, the draining, the inner waste, but from the character's relationship to it, their clinging to a particular form of knowing, a particular outcome, a particular sense of control. We often believe that ease will come when we have all the answers, when we can predict every turn, when we can eliminate every discomfort. But life, by its very nature, is a journey into the unknown. We cannot fully grasp it, cannot fully control it, cannot fully predict it. And when we attempt to do so, when we cling to this illusion of knowing and control, we create friction. We create dukkha. Master Kenji, with his quiet wisdom, once observed a young apprentice struggling to navigate a small boat across a river. The fog had rolled in thickly, obscuring the banks, swallowing the familiar landmarks. The apprentice was frantic, rowing harder, trying to see through the mist, becoming agitated when he could not discern his path. Master Kenji watched for a long time, then called out softly from the bank, his voice barely a whisper through the swirling gray. "Young one, what are you seeking?" The apprentice, wiping sweat from his brow, called back, "I am seeking the other bank, master, but the fog is too thick. I cannot see where I am going." Master Kenji nodded slowly. "And if you cannot see the destination, can you still feel the river beneath your boat? Can you still feel the oar in your hand? Can you still hear the gentle lap of the water against the hull?" The apprentice paused, his frantic rowing ceasing for a moment. He listened. He felt. "Yes, master," he said, his voice softer now. "I can feel the current. I can feel the boat moving." "Then," Master Kenji replied, "allow the current to guide you. Feel the rhythm of your strokes. Trust the sensation of the water. The other bank will reveal itself when it is time. Your ease will come not from seeing the destination, but from navigating the unknowing with awareness, one gentle stroke at a time." This is the essence of finding ease in unknowing. It is not about abandoning all direction or ceasing all effort. It is about releasing the rigid demand for certainty, the desperate grasp for control over the uncontrollable. It is about understanding that we can still take the next step, even if we cannot see the entire path ahead. We can navigate the foggy path of life not by forcing clarity, but by cultivating a gentle curiosity about what is immediately present. When discomfort arises, when uncertainty looms, our usual response is to resist, to push away, to demand a resolution. But what if instead we could meet it with a quiet curiosity? What is this feeling? What is this situation asking of me? What is revealed in this very moment of not knowing? When we approach our inner struggles, our external challenges, with this open, gentle inquiry, the friction begins to soften. The resistance begins to dissolve. It is like walking into a dimly lit room. Our first instinct might be to strain our eyes, to force them to see, to become frustrated by the darkness. But if we allow our eyes to adjust, if we simply relax our gaze and let the subtle shapes and shadows emerge, we begin to see with a different kind of clarity. The clarity of acceptance, the clarity of allowing. This is the middle way, not a reckless abandonment of all foresight, nor a rigid clinging to absolute control. It is a gentle balance, a wise navigation between the two. It is recognizing that the desire for absolute certainty is a burden we need not carry, and that in the very act of releasing that burden, a profound ease can arise. This ease is not found in the absence of all discomfort, for discomfort is a natural part of life's tapestry. It is found in changing our relationship to it. When Indra recognized his own hope, the drought did not magically end, but his inner struggle with it began to ease. When Rupa accepted the limits of draining, the unseen forces did not vanish, but her fear began to subside. When Panu saw the transformation of waste, his inner poisons did not disappear, but his resistance to them softened, opening the way for change. In this moment, I invite you to consider where in your own life you might be clinging to knowing, clinging to control. Is there a situation you are trying desperately to predict? An outcome you are trying rigidly to force? A discomfort you are trying fiercely to eliminate? Notice the friction that arises from this clinging. Feel the subtle tension in your body, the tightening in your mind, and then, gently, without judgment, invite a moment of release. Can you allow yourself to not know? Can you allow yourself to not be in control? Can you simply take the next small step with awareness, trusting that what needs to be revealed will be revealed in its own time? This is not a surrender to apathy, but a surrender to wisdom. It is a recognition of the inherent flow of life and a willingness to move with it rather than against it. It is a profound act of self-compassion to release the heavy burden of having to know, having to control. Take a gentle breath now, noticing how the air fills your lungs. As you exhale, imagine releasing any need for certainty, any desire for absolute control. Inhale, drawing in a sense of quiet acceptance of unknowing. Exhale, releasing the friction that arises from resistance. Feel the support beneath you, holding you not as a fixed entity, but as a presence navigating the gentle currents of life's mystery. Allow your mind to drift gently into this ease of unknowing, this quiet wisdom of simply being present with what is, without needing to define it, predict it, or control it. Rest here in the quiet freedom of not needing to know. Simply rest. We have journeyed far. We have seen how the desire to know, to control, to fix can create an inner friction, a subtle resistance to the very flow of life. And we have begun to explore the profound ease that arises when we gently release that burden, when we allow ourselves to simply be present with the mystery, one breath, one step at a time. Now, as our path draws to its gentle close, we come to a deeper understanding of what this release truly reveals. It reveals not an emptiness of void, but an emptiness of open potential. It reveals a spaciousness that allows for everything to arise, and from this spaciousness, a profound and natural compassion begins to bloom. Let us return for a moment to Sanjay, the mirror polisher. He had dedicated his life to creating surfaces of perfect clarity, believing that truth was singular, unblemished, and fixed. He sought to polish away any perceived flaw, both in the mirrors he crafted and in his own intricate truth. But you may recall that day when a cracked mirror, damaged beyond repair, came into his hands. Its surface, once perfect, was now fractured into a mosaic of sharp lines, reflecting the afternoon light in 100 splintered angles. Sanjay had looked into that broken mirror, and instead of a singular image, he saw his own face, not whole, but broken into many parts. Each part reflected a different fragment of the room around him, a different perspective, a different aspect of light and shadow. He saw the dust motes dancing in the sun, the rough texture of his polishing cloth, the worn lines on his own fingers, all at once, from multiple angles. It was not one truth, but many truths simultaneously. In that moment, something profound shifted within him. He realized that the clarity he had always sought was not in the perfect, singular surface, but in the acceptance of the broken, the multiple, the real. The mirror, in its fractured state, was not empty of truth. It was empty of its rigid definition, empty of the expectation of singularity. And in that very emptiness of fixed form, it revealed a richer, more comprehensive understanding. It showed him the open potential of truth, not confined to one reflection, but available in 1,000 shimmering facets. This is the essence of shunyata, a word often translated as emptiness. But it is not an emptiness of nothingness, not a void that chills or diminishes. Instead, it is an emptiness of inherent, fixed, and independent existence. It is the understanding that nothing, not a single thing, possesses a permanent, unchanging, isolated self. Like Sanjay's broken mirror, everything is interconnected, constantly shifting, arising and passing, influencing and being influenced. When we understand this, when we truly grasp that our own self, our own identity, is not a solid, unchanging entity, but a dynamic, flowing, ever-changing process, a spaciousness opens within us. This is the wisdom of anatta, the not-self, which we explored previously. When we release the heavy burden of a fixed identity, we become like the sky, vast and open, holding all the clouds and storms and sunshine, yet remaining untouched, undefinable by them. And when we combine this spaciousness with the understanding of anicca, impermanence, the gentle, ceaseless flow of all things, like a river that never stays the same, then the rigid definitions we hold for ourselves and for others begin to dissolve. We see that everything is in a constant state of becoming, a constant state of transformation. There is no fixed good or bad, no permanent success or failure, no absolute perfect or flawed. These are merely concepts we impose upon the ceaseless, open potential of reality. Consider Uma, the gecko trainer. She too had clung to a rigid definition of belonging, of training as control. She taught her geckos to stay, to obey, to belong to the safety of the home. When her favorite gecko left for the wild, disappearing into the vast green, she felt her efforts had vanished, her understanding of belonging broken. But then, weeks later, the gecko returned, not alone, but bringing others with it. Uma understood then that training was not about holding fast, not about rigid control, but about creating an invitation, an environment where choice and connection could coexist. The gecko, in its freedom, had discovered a deeper form of belonging, a belonging that was not imposed, but chosen, shared, and expanded. Its journey into the wild, its apparent emptiness of fixed attachment to Uma's home, had actually created the open potential for a greater, more expansive connection. It was an invitation, born of spaciousness, not control. This open potential, this spaciousness that arises from understanding the impermanent, non-fixed nature of all things, naturally gives rise to metta, to loving kindness, to compassion. When we release our rigid definitions, when we stop clinging to how things should be or how people should act, we create immense space for understanding and connection, both within ourselves and with the world around us. If we believe we are a fixed, imperfect self, we struggle against ourselves. If we believe others are fixed in their flaws, we struggle against them. But when we see the open potential in all beings, when we perceive that every moment, every experience, every flaw is simply a facet of an ever-changing, interconnected tapestry, then judgment softens, resistance dissolves, and in its place, a gentle, spacious kindness emerges. Imagine looking at yourself not as a collection of fixed attributes, but as a flowing river, constantly moving, constantly shaping itself. The eddies and currents, the smooth stretches and the rough rapids, all are part of the river. If you judge one part as bad and another as good, you are resisting the river's own nature. But if you see the whole with a spacious, kind awareness, embracing all its facets, then compassion flows naturally. You offer yourself the same gentle understanding you would offer to a beloved friend. This is how Gautam, the shadow puppet master, found freedom. When the oil lamp flickered unexpectedly, causing the shadows to dance beyond his control, he could have resisted, fought to regain his rigid mastery. But instead, he allowed the unpredictable beauty to unfold. He embraced the emptiness of his fixed plan, and in that spaciousness, a richer, more vibrant story emerged, captivating his audience and teaching him to surrender. His compassion for the process, for the moment as it was, allowed for a deeper connection to his art. Asha, the dew collector, initially felt profound loss as her collected dew vanished with the dawn. She clung to the idea of permanence, of possession. But when she observed the plants actively drinking the dew, absorbing its life-giving moisture, she realized her efforts were not vanishing, but transforming, delivering. The emptiness of her possession became the fullness of nourishment. Her compassion for the natural cycle, for the plant's need, allowed her to see her work as a delivery, not a loss. Vivek, the bellows operator, perceived the tear in his bellows as a flaw, a brokenness that diminished his efforts. He initially struggled against it, but in his continued work, he discovered that this perceived imperfection created a cooling breeze, refreshing him even as the fire was fed. The emptiness of perfection in his bellows opened the potential for unexpected benefit. His compassion for the broken thing, for the situation as it was, revealed its hidden advantage. When we approach our own perceived imperfections, our own moments of brokenness, with this spacious, kind awareness, we invite transformation. We stop fighting against ourselves, against the natural flow of life. We release the heavy burden of needing to be perfect, of needing to be fixed, of needing to be a singular, unchanging self. Instead, we learn to see ourselves and the world as a dynamic interplay of light and shadow, of coming and going, of forming and dissolving. We see the constant dance of impermanence, the intricate web of interconnectedness, and the vast, open potential that lies within everything, precisely because it is not fixed. This understanding is not meant to diminish our experience, but to expand it. It is not about becoming empty of feeling, but about becoming empty of rigid judgments, allowing a more profound, unconditional love and acceptance to arise. It is the deep recognition that within the constant change, within the interconnectedness, within the spaciousness of not-self, there is an inherent goodness, a fundamental wholeness that does not need to be earned or created, but simply recognized. In this moment, I invite you to bring to mind any aspect of yourself or your life that you currently perceive as a flaw, a brokenness, an imperfection. Perhaps it is a persistent habit, a lingering doubt, a physical characteristic, or a past mistake. Instead of turning away from it, instead of judging it, can you simply observe it with a spacious, kind awareness? Can you recognize that even this perceived imperfection is not a fixed, singular truth, but a facet of your ever-changing, multifaceted being? Can you allow it to be empty of your rigid definition of badness or wrongness? And in that spaciousness, can you offer it the gentle kindness, the tender compassion that you would offer to a precious, vulnerable part of yourself? Notice how the act of simply observing, without judgment, creates a different kind of feeling in your body, a different quality in your mind. This is the blossoming of metta, of loving kindness, born from the spaciousness of understanding. Take a deep, gentle breath now, allowing the air to fill your chest with a sense of open potential. As you exhale, imagine releasing any rigid definitions you hold for yourself or for others, creating space for acceptance. Inhale, drawing in this spacious, kind awareness, embracing all facets of your being. Exhale, letting go of judgment, allowing compassion to flow freely. Feel yourself resting in this profound understanding, seeing yourself and the world with eyes of gentle kindness, recognizing the inherent open potential in everything. Rest here in the quiet embrace of spacious compassion. Simply rest. And so, our gentle journey through the whispers of awakening reaches its quiet culmination. We have walked alongside Gautam, the shadow puppet master, learning that losing control can, paradoxically, create a deeper, more vibrant beauty, a story richer than any rigid plan. We have felt Asha's quiet resolve, understanding that vanishing is not loss, but the very act of delivery, the medicine reaching its true destination. We witnessed Vivek, the bellows operator, discover that a perceived brokenness, a tear, could offer an unexpected gift of coolness, a hidden advantage. We soared with Param, the vulture watcher, realizing that circling does not always signify doom, but sometimes merely curiosity, or even a deep necessary rest. We waited with Kanti, the smoke signal reader, understanding that the act of sending, of communicating our truth, matters immensely, even when the immediate response remains unseen. We observed Rupa, the leech collector, seeing that what drains us will eventually reach its capacity and release its hold, inviting us to let go of our own fear. We saw with Sanjay, the mirror polisher, that a cracked surface, reflecting fragmented truths, could reveal a more complex, comprehensive understanding than a singular, unblemished clarity. We walked before dawn with Panu, the night soil carrier, discovering that what is expelled, what is deemed waste, holds the profound potential for transformation, becoming the very basis for new life. We learned from Uma, the gecko trainer, that belonging is not about rigid control, but about creating an invitation, a space for choice and connection to coexist. And we trembled with Indra, the rain diviner, recognizing that the intense trembling we feel is often not a warning from fate, but the deep, aching pulse of our own hopes and desires. Each of these earnest souls, in their own unique way, encountered an unexpected wisdom. They discovered that true mastery often lies in surrender, that presence is more profound than permanence, and that flaws can hold unexpected benefits. They came to understand that the constant flow of anicca, impermanence, is not a threat, but the very dynamic essence of life itself. They felt the intricate dance of pratyasamutpada, the interconnectedness of all things, where no being or action exists in isolation, but contributes to the larger tapestry. They glimpsed anatta, the spaciousness of not-self, releasing the heavy burden of a fixed identity, allowing for greater freedom and adaptability, like the sky holding clouds, but never becoming them. They found ease in the acceptance of dukkha, not by eliminating discomfort, but by changing their relationship to it, cultivating a gentle curiosity rather than resistance, navigating the foggy path one step at a time. And in that spaciousness, in that open potential, shunyata, they discovered the blossoming of metta, of loving kindness and compassion for themselves and for all beings. The journey we have shared is not one of dramatic revelations, but of quiet, internal shifts. It is a gradual shedding of misconceptions, a gentle turning of the gaze inward, to reveal an inherent clarity that has always been present. It is the recognition that within the constant change, within the intricate web, within the vast open potential, there is a fundamental goodness, a wholeness that does not need to be earned or created, but simply recognized. This recognition invites a deep and profound rest, not a rest born of exhaustion, but a rest born of completion, of integration. A rest where the mind, having journeyed far, can finally settle into the quiet understanding that everything is already complete. You are already home. Now, as we bring our time together to its gentle close, I invite you to allow your body to settle even more deeply. Feel the support beneath you, holding you, steady and secure. There is nothing left to do, nowhere left to go, nothing to understand, nothing to fix. Simply allow yourself to be held. Let your attention now drift to your feet. Feel the tips of your toes, small and quiet. Allow them to soften. Let go of any tension you might be holding there. Feel the soles of your feet resting, supported, heavy. Release any effort, any gripping. Allow your feet to completely relax. Move your awareness gently up to your ankles. Notice the space around them, the gentle hinge of the joints. Allow your ankles to soften, to release. Let any lingering tightness simply melt away. Now, feel your calves, the muscles in your lower legs. Allow them to become heavy, soft. Release any memory of standing, of walking, of effort. Your calves are simply resting, complete as they are. Bring your attention to your knees, the strength and flexibility they hold. Now, allow them to soften, to relax. Release any tension in your kneecaps, behind your knees. Let them be open, at ease. Move your awareness up into your thighs, the large, strong muscles of your upper legs. Feel their weight, their connection to your hips. Allow your thighs to become heavy, supported, sinking into whatever is beneath you. Release any tension, any holding. Now your hips and your pelvis, the very base of your torso, the foundation. Feel the broadness of your hips resting. Allow your pelvis to settle, to soften. Let go of any effort to hold yourself upright, to control. Allow your hips and pelvis to be completely supported, completely at rest. Bring your attention to your lower back, that place where we often carry so much. Allow your lower back to soften, to release. Imagine it spreading, lengthening, sinking. Let go of any gripping, any tightness. Your lower back is resting, supported. Now your abdomen, your belly, soft and gentle. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your breath, a natural, effortless movement. Allow your belly to be completely soft, completely relaxed. Release any need to hold it in, to control it. Simply breathe, simply allow. Move your awareness up to your chest, the gentle expansion with each breath, the quiet rhythm of your heart. Feel the spaciousness within your chest. Allow your chest to soften, to open. Release any tension, any tightness around your heart. Your chest is open, at ease. Now, feel your upper back, your shoulder blades. Allow them to spread, to soften, to sink into the surface beneath you. Release any effort to hold your shoulders back, to straighten. Your upper back is resting, completely supported. Bring your attention down your arms. Start with your hands. Feel your fingers, long and relaxed. Allow them to soften, to gently curl or rest as they choose. Release any tension in your palms, in your knuckles. Your hands are soft, at rest. Feel your wrists, the gentle hinge that connects your hands to your forearms. Allow your wrists to soften, to relax completely. Move up to your forearms, the muscles, the bones. Allow your forearms to become heavy, soft, completely at rest. Your elbows, the bend in your arms. Allow them to soften, to release. And now your upper arms, your biceps, your triceps. Allow them to become completely heavy, completely soft, sinking deeply into rest. Feel your shoulders now, the place where we often carry the weight of the world. Allow your shoulders to drop, to melt away from your ears. Release any tension, any holding. Let your shoulders be completely soft, completely relaxed. Move your awareness to your neck, the delicate balance that holds your head. Allow your neck to soften, to lengthen. Release any tension in your throat, in the back of your neck. Let your head be completely supported, completely at rest. Now, your face. Start with your jaw. Allow your jaw to soften, to unhinge slightly. Let your tongue rest gently in your mouth. Release any clenching, any grinding. Your jaw is soft, at ease. Feel your cheeks. Allow them to soften, to relax. Your eyes, resting gently in their sockets. Allow them to soften, to sink deeper. Release any effort to see, to focus. Your eyes are completely at rest. Your forehead, smooth and soft. Release any furrowing, any creasing. Your forehead is relaxed, at peace. And finally, the crown of your head, your entire scalp. Feel a sense of spaciousness, of lightness. Allow your entire head to be completely at rest, completely supported. Now, feel your entire body, from the tips of your toes to the crown of your head. A wave of deep, gentle relaxation moving through you, washing away any remaining tension, any lingering effort. You are simply resting, breathing, being. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to fix, nowhere you need to go. All effort can be released. All thoughts can drift like clouds across an open sky. You are simply here in this moment, complete. Everything is complete as it is. You are already home. Simply rest. Let go. Sleep.